The MC of this story can gain the powers, skills, features, and even body parts of any creature he has eaten before. By combining the powers and traits of different animals, Kim can become an invincible warrior. But he is far from a hero in the ordinary world. In fact, Kim is the most persecuted criminal in the world for a number of crimes related to poaching. When he tasted all the creatures on Earth and was hiding somewhere in Africa running errands for the local crime king, the police finally found him. Our hero was ambushed and captured. But can handcuffs hold back such a monster? As he was being taken to the prison, something unusual began to happen outside. 2 moons appeared in the sky. And when Kim dealt with all the cops and went outside, he found himself in a completely new magical world full of orcs, trolls, and monsters. Will our hero be able to get to the top of the food chain and become the strongest creature in this new world? Let's find out. Kim rips out of the van and witnesses 2 moons in the sky. That's when he realizes that he's not on Earth anymore. Being arrested by his partner in crime, who turned out to be an international police officer, arrested by the authorities, and now being alone in a strange new world, was a situation that would make a normal person fall apart. However, our guy reflects upon himself and finds out that he's not a normal person. He thinks that it's for the best because, according to the hunter, he committed endless crimes all over the world, and with such a track record, the police and the UN chased him relentlessly. On top of that, with the power he has, Kim wonders if he can really be classified as a human. He contemplates how he has already given up on humanity since that day. As he is about to get deeper into the story, Kim yanks him out of his thoughts. Thinking that now he doesn't need to stay alert, suddenly he hears something. It appears to be a bunch of wolves approaching him. Being one of their kind, Kim recalls that wild animals are supposed to know who to avoid by instinct, or maybe not. As the wolves leap towards him with his fangs wide open, Kim starts to grit his teeth and roars as he transforms into a lion. But the wolves don't stop when they witness a predator in front of them. While the lion catches one of them and kills it, the other wolves flee away. Grumbling, Kim finally gets his meal after a long time and grabs a bite of the wolf, which is the first taste of this place. As soon as he sinks his lion fangs into the wolf, he is unable to tear through the skin and changes into a hippo. After eating his meal with only bones left behind, Kim ruminates about how that simple wolf hide was tough enough to bite through the teeth of a hippo, and the teeth of the shark barely ripped it apart. Other than the abnormally tough wolf hide, the thing that confused him the most was that the wolves didn't have any resistance to his roar. Scientifically, the roar was supposed to vibrate the muscles enough for them to weaken, and for wolves of that size, they should have faltered for a second. Having at least common knowledge, Kim sights at the 2 moons and deliberates that common knowledge is useless in this place. Later, our guy seems to tear apart what's left of the bone and toss it onto the pile of several animal bones. The boy then narrates that it's been a week since his first meal, and in that time, he's hunted and eaten all sorts of animals in the forest, like a bear with abnormally large paws, a snake, and a deer with sharp antlers. Furthermore, these animals were not so different from those on Earth. And in order to find some sort of common knowledge unique to this world that could do everything, Kim ventures out. Turning his hand into a wolf's paw, he spots a human in the forest and speculates there are humans in this world too. Thinking that he might be able to gain information from him, he sneaks up from behind and grabs the human with his big wolf claw. Kim then reveals that he has the ability to apply any body part he's eaten directly to his body, but he cannot use this ability whenever he wants, as it comes with many limitations. He further adds that he can't use body parts from creatures like lobsters or centipedes, which have vastly different body structures and cannot apply overlapping skills. Our guy tries to talk with the human, but with his head like a hawk, he is unable to speak like a human. As the human catches the terrifying sight of Kim, it scares the life out of him, and he dashes away. But the abnormal creature catches him with the claws and kills him without a thought. While the human is drenched in blood and tries to speak something, Kim acknowledges that he speaks a different language. Watching the human lying helpless, our boy had no means or motive to help that man, and even if he were alive, they wouldn't have been able to communicate. As heartless as it may seem, Kim feels nothing inside as he considers himself a completely different species from this human. In situations like these, he plans on eating the human as it'd be faster to get information from him. It appears that Kim's skill allows him to transform a portion of his brain into that of the creature he's eaten, which grants him access to their memories. Eventually, thanks to his ability and the human's unwilling cooperation, our guy learns the language they speak in this world. As he also takes the human's clothes, he hits the jackpot and finds a guide to monsters in that dead guy's possession. Using this guide, Kim was able to determine what monsters and systems existed in this world. Through these systems, he thought of achieving his ultimate dreams, which he had given up on Earth. 2 months later, our boy learns about the regenerative power of a troll. After hunting the troll and smashing its brain, the troll was able to regenerate within a month. Thinking this information was beyond what the guide told him, He hits the troll with his wolf claw and it awakes. As the troll's face is kept inside the bucket, excluding its body, the vicious boy seems to check how long he has to burn it to peel off the skin. Kim speculates if the troll doesn't have any tolerance for acids or poisons, and to what extent its body can regenerate, still having so much to test. He then walks towards the troll, and with a terrifying look in his eyes, he wonders what kind of experiment he should do on the creature. After getting his hands on almost all the creatures, he dreams of becoming the most powerful creature ever. The next scene takes us to the Onyx Oaks clan of the Great Northern Forest, where a warrior encounters the Onyx. The warrior informs him about the prophecy, which reveals that a monster will be born in the Great Forest and will eat every creature it comes across, absorbing and using their skills. Claiming that he will be the most powerful monster, we are then shown a glimpse of a beast that seems to be Kim, who devours the troll. The next scene flips to the Great Forest's troll territory, where we see the head of trolls inspecting a human footprint he just found. It looks like they are looking for someone as they realize that someone has been eating humans all by themselves. The head orders his underlings to find the humans before all that's left are bones. Surprisingly, they follow the footprints, which lead them to a cave where Mr. Kim seems to be torturing the poor troll. They smell the scent of a human, as one of the trolls feels something off and notifies his boss, who is busy thinking that this is set up by the bastards they're looking for so they can eat the humans all by themselves. Suddenly they smell a troll's blood, but before the boss can react, our guy emerges from the cave. His animal instinct makes him kill the trolls' heads, realizing he has to use them as test subjects. But now he can't. As the trolls see their boss getting killed in front of their eyes and are confused to see the monster with a troll's muscles and a big bear's front paw, one of them attacks the monster, but his hand is cut off by a fatal bite's poison fangs, which makes him paralyzed and unable to move his body. It turns out that Mr. Kim, who has been experimenting for a long time, has found that paralyzing the trolls is the best way to render their fast regeneration useless. While the troll screams out of fear and tries to warn its fellow trolls to run away, our boy makes sure to kill all of them. It is then revealed that Mr. Kim finds something new from the Book of Beasts: skills. Although he expected this book guide to be a game at first, the things he ate in this world used abilities similar to the skills. Believing that skills exist, Kim learns a few crucial things from his experiments. Firstly, the skills don't work against organisms without skills like the viper's fatal bites use venom skills to paralyze their prey. They only leave physical scars to him and not the venom. Secondly, the attacks that aren't skills also affect opponents with skills. Like, after attacking a big hand bear's arm with the venom skill and a viper's fangs, both were able to paralyze the bear. Thirdly, the reason why the hard wolves who have the debuff immunity got intimidated by his roar was probably because of his tiger's roar and not some other animal from this place. In other words, since Mr. Kim came from Earth, he's immune to their skills, but his attacks are fatal to them. Thus, he can become an apex predator here because Earth is dominated by humanity. No matter what organism he consumes, he can't beat humanity since science and weapons easily exceed an organism's limits. In contrast, in this world, there are countless numbers of powerful monsters who prey on humans, and nuclear bombs and science don't exist here, which means nothing is stopping him. Ever since Mr. Kim was young, he dreamt of being an apex predator. In order to achieve his goal, all he gotta do is eat the organisms that live here, like a troll and its infinite regeneration, an ogre with its immense strength, and a monster that breathes out flames like a dragon. In the next moment, we see someone spawned as a slime that can devour anything, and wonder if this fantasy world is like the ones he saw in a cartoon. Thinking that it's God's plan that he wants him to become the strongest, the slimy creature opens the status window and checks his skill, which seems to be using souls to consume anything and own it. Just then, a snake slithers out of the bushes, and the slime devours it. Being able to use the skill of paralyzing venom decreases his soul as a result of devouring. Not giving enough care about his decreasing soul, the slime considers himself as a main character and devours as many organisms as he can. It appears that the reason this poor guy was mistreated in the past and had to struggle was because he met a powerless parent. Apparently, slime has an ability that can be compared to a monster, and it will slowly use up its soul, eventually destroying itself. At the last, the goddess of Elmwood picks him as a disposable rather than a main character. The next scene takes us to Elmwood, which is under the goddess's protection, and we see the warrior chosen by the goddess. It appears that the warrior was once killed by the monster and died a horrible death due to the destruction caused by the monster. The monster, with its overwhelming power, brought calamity to the entire world. Events took an unexpected turn, and the warrior seemed to have returned to his former self 10 years ago, realizing this was the last chance given to him by the goddess to stop that monster. As he starts speaking about a divine revelation, a strike of lightning-like pain hits him, and he wonders if it's because he lied or if this is a punishment for breaking the warrior's commandments. The elder becomes curious about the revelation he is talking about and asks for more information. That's when the warrior informs him that a monster that eats and absorbs skills will be born in this forest, and he is here to stop that evil beast from acting in the future. The elder affirms this as a serious issue and then mentions the missing trolls from the past 2 months. He concludes that the monster is after the regenerative power of trolls because it is a unique skill. The elder adds that if they search for the trolls now, they might be able to find the base of the monster the warrior is looking for. The warrior clenches his fist and determines that this time, things will not go according to the monster's plan. On the contrary, Mr. Kim has been experimenting on the trolls, and only one seems to be alive who seems to be begging to be killed. While all the other trolls are killed in the experiment, our guy, who has gathered enough information about the trolls, finally decides to kill him. As he's about to kill the troll, he learns that the troll's blood can be used as a recovery potion after boiling it in the guidebook. Therefore, Kim spares the troll's life only to torture it again, and the poor monster curses him, pleading to kill him. After that, he continues reading and finds a fascinating species, the forest lizardman, who peculiarly appears like humans. Captivated by the lizard man being a form between a mammal and a reptile, our guy puts on a devilish grin as it looks like he has found his new prey. Later, at the Great Forest Swamp area, the lizardman spots a troll-like creature in their territory and wonders where they've been hiding because no one has seen them lately. Meanwhile, one of them threatens the troll for daring to come in their area. The monster approaches the troll and realizes that it's something very terrifying as it witnesses a giant creature with a snake head and troll's hand. Before the lizardman can escape, our heartless guy grabs the lizardman by the neck and devours it as he effortlessly gulps down the whole thing. While the other lizardman senses disgust, it also witnesses the weird creature and realizes that if this creature is left alive, their race will be in danger. But as he attempts to kill the monster, the lizardman is stunned to see the regeneration ability as Kim heals the wound in no time. He then brutally kills the lizardman with the poison of his own race. The scene then flips to the slime monster, who doesn't find anything special about orcs as he finishes devouring one. Smelling something bloody diffusing across the cave, the slime enters the cave and uses his hard wolf skill to look more carefully, spotting many lizardmen dead bodies. Thinking he got lucky, the slime devours all the dead bodies and thinks he hit the jackpot. As he slurps his food, he gains 3 new abilities from the lizardman, and at that moment, the warrior appears behind him. The slime looks behind only to find a human standing behind it and asks the warrior what he is. Believing he came here after feeling traces of a troll and sensing evil presence energy, the warrior is shocked to see the little slime. While the slime asks who the hell he is, the warrior senses evil and concludes that it's not an ordinary slime but a creature of pure evil. Revealing himself, the human declares that he's a warrior. Upon hearing this, the slime, who seems obsessed with being the main character, anticipates that the warrior is here for an offering to assist him in his sluggish growth. Thinking even in the anime, they start off by eating a dragon at least. The slime seems to be disappointed to see the trash warrior. While the warrior is sure that the slimy creature is insulting him, Slime recalls that a warrior is selected by the goddess and insults them by calling them trash. Badmouthing the goddess, the slime calls the goddess of this world an idiot and offers her a spot in its harem that he will make in the future. As soon as these words erupt from its mouth, the warrior doesn't seem to take this well. Many insulted him and his parents, but not one person insulted the goddess who created the Elmwood continent. Claiming that no one should insult the goddess, the warrior pulls out her sword. Looks like the slime has a death wish when he asks the warrior if she's kidding herself and makes it clear that he's the main character. Wondering what title he should get for killing a warrior, the arrogant creature decides to eat her and take her skills. The slime attacks the warrior, and she slashes it with her sword, speculating that if a slime's mucus disappears, they can't regenerate what they lost. But since this slime is a monster, it regenerates really quickly, thanks to the troll's ability that it had consumed. Watching the slime regenerate, the warrior becomes confident about the slime being the future calamity. Wielding her sword with extreme power, she calls him a monster of destruction and strikes the sword with the power of greatest judgment, making the slime scream in agony. The scene then switches to Kim, who narrates that with the structure of an animal's head, they cannot use human speech. But after consuming a lizard man, they are able to speak on the same level as humans, even with a reptile's head. Because the reptile and mammal parts are compatible. With the need for more, Mr. Kim appears in front of lizardmen as they first think of him as their kind. At that moment, they realize it's not a lizard man, but another creature and attack him. However, with the poison made for them, the powerful monster kills all the lizard men. On the other hand, the warrior walks away after thinking that the slime is dead now, but it reappears in bad condition and seems to be recovering slowly because of the damage. Needing something to eat instantly that can provide him energy, the slime goes into the cave, and moments later, our guy comes back after hunting. Witnessing all his food gone, Kim is taken aback and wonders which fucker did this, eventually spotting the slime creature. We are then transported to Slime's backstory. It occurs that he used to be a human, and people used to call him a slob because all he did was follow his instincts, like not trying to do anything at all. In other words, this guy was a useless piece of shit. Even his parents abandoned him because he got fat and was jobless at the age of 40. Blaming it on the parents that they didn't use to fulfill their duties, he didn't ask for dirt poor parents anyway. The story takes a turn when this fat guy ends up in this somehow and is reborn as a most powerful slime. Well, that's what this guy likes to think. He was sure he was the chosen one and the main character of this place. Coming to the present life, the slime ends up in a pitiful state right now because of the warrior. He thinks of it as a challenge for himself and decides to take his revenge after devouring every skill in this world. Just then, Mr. Kim arrives and the slime couldn't be more happy to see his prey right in front of him and leaps towards him. The boy then narrates about things that happened in the past 2 weeks, starting off with some bad news. He can no longer use the lab for his experiments because the slime that came in while he was hunting for the lizard man contaminated everything inside. But the good news is that when the slime attacked him, it went into his mouth and he absorbed all the skills. According to the illustrated book that Mr. Kim has, slimes change form and evolve based on the things they eat regularly. Initially, our guy wasn't able to consume minerals, but a slime's diet isn't limited to living creatures. This means now that Kim, who is already the most powerful monster, has absorbed a slime, he can eat metal, and he can transform into metal. The next scene takes us to the land of the great forest dragon, where we see the dragon gliding back to its cave. The dragon lives in solitude and has a title given to her by the lowly creatures that serve her. The lizard man worships the dragon and calls her Scarlet Blaze, who lights up the sky. It appears that a dragon has a baby, and it's very dear to her. Her worshippers give her treasure, and in return, she provides them with prosperity and protection, although she's been neglecting her duties ever since her baby was born. The dragon then heads out to the lizardmen's territory and witnesses some signs of battle, which leads her to wonder if an intruder has entered. The dragon gets furious and decides to make everyone pay for harming the creatures protected by the Great Scarlet Blaze. On the other hand, Mr. Kim seems to be busy thinking about the mucus that covers the lizardman's scales, which acts as a disinfectant and antibiotic. The mucus that covers the scales and slime is made up of the same kind of mucus, which means if he were to eat durable metals and change this mucus into metal slime, he would undoubtedly get stronger. Wondering where he would find a metal like that, he looks around with his hawk eyes and down to the orc territory of the Great Forest, which is the most powerful tribe. Finding it difficult to deal with 40 strong orcs, he thinks of another way to sneak into their territory. That's when a red dragon flies above him, catching his attention. Because of the memories of the lizard man, he's aware that the dragon has a baby. Using his ability, he can swap the brains of the animals that he ate and examine their memories. However, if he swaps his entire brain, he'll lose his senses, so he only swaps a part of it. According to his book, the dragons are protective of their young ones, and our boy gets an evil idea to mess with the dragon baby, supposing that he doesn't even need to step in. The mother dragon piles up the food for her kid, and instructs the baby dragon to wait for her before she returns patiently. Baffled, the baby dragon asks his mother when he will go outside, but the dragon warns him not to even think about going out when she's not home. After that, the dragon activates the barrier magic to ensure the safety of its child and leaves to inspect the situation. The scene then flips back 30 minutes earlier, before the dragon leaves. Kim has been standing near the dragon's habitat, and to his surprise, he easily finds the way to the dragon's cave thanks to the lizard man's memory. He throws the dead antelope he was holding to check if the barrier magic is activated, and as expected, the antelope falls down, burnt. Being aware of the barrier because of the lizard man's memory, our guy also acknowledges that the magic doesn't work for those from Earth. Just as the dragon leaves, he goes into the cave where the baby dragon is while complaining about how high this place is. He then transforms his lower teeth into a troll, a fatal's bite, red scales, and bits of other Earth animals that were enough to fool the barrier, looking like a dragon. Panicked, the baby dragon questions the intruder in front of him, who seems to be so invested in the treasure collection the dragon owns as he checks it out. This makes the baby dragon angry as he attacks Kim and tells him to get out, but the poor baby is thrown by that monster and collapses while calling out for his mom. After 1 week, the mother dragon returns to her home, frustrated for not figuring out anything. Suddenly, she notices that her kid doesn't come running towards her like it usually would, and looks around when she finds the lifeless body of her baby lying on the floor. Freaked out, the dragon uses all her recovery, healing, and cure magic to ensure her baby is okay and eventually succeeds. While she asks the baby dragon about what happened after comforting him, the baby cries as he reveals that it was a guy with bottom teeth popped out who hurt him as well, and the food she collected for her baby was all taken by that intruder. The description of the teeth popped out, and red skin that was told by her kid instantly makes her realize that those orc bastards are the ones to hurt her baby, since they are the only ones like that in the Great Forest. She decides to make sure they pay for this and rumbles out of anger, which satisfies our boy, who has been waiting for the reaction. On the other hand, in the orc territory, one of the orcs reports to his elder about a suspicious thing they found while they were on duty. After inspecting it, the elder wonders how a valuable relic like this could be inside a bush with blood on it. It turns out to be the dragon's blood, which makes him more confused. But before they can do anything else, the angry dragon soars above them and is ready to take a payback. The dragon discovers that it's her baby's blood on that sword, which drives her stark raving mad as she attacks everyone. Surprised by the sudden attack, the orc's horn calls forth every orc in the forest and figures out it's a trap. It is revealed to us that the fight goes on for 3 days. Although the orcs won, countless of them died, and those who survived left the great forest, leaving the dragon as a feast for the monster, Kim. On the other hand, the baby dragon realizes that his mother is no more and grits its teeth in anger, leaving its nest. Coming back to our main character, he recalls all the things he ate up until now, which include hard wolves, trolls, lizardmen, orcs, a dragon, and a variety of other monsters mentioned in the book, which brings him to leave the forest since he has nothing to do here anymore. After that, he gets in the cart of a merchant who Kim told that he had memory loss after being injured in the forest. The merchant seems like a nice human and tells him about the herbs that bring youth, items of rare monsters, and secrets of ancient kingdoms. For this reason, everyone comes to this forest, but most of them die or get lucky and end up like Kim. It comes about that Kim learned a lot about this forest on his way to a village, and learned almost everything except for the status tab. It is said that the status tab is common sense in this world, and tells the user information about their lives. He tries to access it, but for some reason is not able to, which makes him think maybe it's because he's not from here. Later, they arrive at the village where the merchant drops him off and leaves while admiring the city named as Santo Canargo, which seems pretty big and much cleaner than he expected. As Kim reads the posters on the wall about washing hands to prevent diseases and information about self-hygiene, he finds civilization quite advanced. Just then, he overhears 2 people talking about this city being oddly clean. One of them gossips that only the area near the palace is this clean because the second prince grew up here, and he was the first person to come up with the idea that hygiene is related to diseases. The guy concludes that the prince did all this before he was 10, making them think he's a genius and wish to meet him at his coming-to-age ceremony next month. Our guy, who has been eavesdropping on the entire conversation, reckons that the idea of hygiene came around the 20th century on Earth, while this civilization looks like it's in the Middle Age, which leads him to assume that there might be another human like him who has the memories of Earth, getting curious to meet the prince. In an unexpected turn of events, not before too long, our guy gets to meet the prince, who turns out to be Eddie Montoya, his partner who betrayed him earlier and was devoured by Kim. It is revealed that Eddie Montoya was his real name before he was reborn. He was a second-generation Latino born in the US to immigrant parents. This guy was living the life of an elite, worked as an investigator for the International Special Police Force and as a secret agent for the CIA. However, his life met an expected end after meeting a vicious monster, and just like that, his life was over. What the guy didn't know was the existence of a new world after death, as when he opened his eyes, he was a child again. His name was Edward, and shockingly, he was the second eldest prince of the kingdom of Grand Contine. To his surprise, his second life was easy. He somehow ruled this place with the help of his knowledge from Earth, which was a godlike power in this primitive world. He introduced hygiene, science, and astronomy, and with the training he received in his elite life, anything was possible for him. But Edward was lucky enough not to be reborn as a peasant, as no one would have taken him seriously, and he was born into royalty. Furthermore, the eldest prince does not succeed to the throne. Therefore, it's only a matter of time before Edward becomes king. As the crowd cheers for the second eldest prince, he dreams of becoming the king of this world. The scene then takes us to the Lord of Santo Carnargo's manor, where Prince Edward, lying in bed, complains about a tiring day, thinking that forced smiles are harder than he thought. Suddenly he hears the creak from the window and watches a giant lizard barging into his room. Freaking out, Edward asks who the hell he is and pulls out his sword. He immediately recognizes that it's a lizard man and is taken aback as he wonders how a lizard man can get into a miner and manage to break through the barrier spell. Just then, the lizard man greets the prince and changes back to its original form. Asking if he remembers him, Edward is panicked-stricken as he recalls that he's a fucking monster pet shop. Frightened to death, the poor guy doesn't seem to believe his eyes as he thinks that it must be a nightmare and stumbles on the floor as he faints. While Kim thinks it is more dramatic than he expected, Someone knocks on the door and calls for Edward, the Highness. As the servant comes in and watches him asleep, he looks at the big bear stuffed animal. Nonetheless, the servant yanks out a knife to kill the prince, who seems to be unconscious, and as he is about to stab him, someone grabs his hand. He looks behind and it turns out to be a big bear, not a stuffed animal, but a real monster. Startled, the guy is scared to death, and Kim roars at him, saying that he can die instead. As the loud noise reverberates through the manor, the other guards dash towards the prince's chamber. While our guy assumes that it's getting out of hand as more guards barge into the room and witness the giant bear. The guards, who emerge as assassins, decide to go with Plan B and kill both the prince and the monster. Meanwhile, the guy from earlier is smashed into the wall. Kim reckons that he can easily deal with these guys, but things will get more complicated if they call more guards. Thinking to escape, the bear grabs the prince and jumps out the window. As the poor prince falls to the ground, Kim, who is not in the mood for being inhuman, saves him and decides to let him live for now, dashing away along with Edward. On the other hand, someone in the manor seems to be writing a letter and is interrupted by the guards who inform him about the prince being kidnapped by the monster. Slamming his hand on the table, the guy seems in disbelief and wonders how someone can kidnap a prince in Santo Carnago. He then orders his guards to gather all the troops and save the prince no matter what it takes. After that, Kim, who had been on the run along with the prince, was chased by many people all the way out of the city. Sitting on the hill, Edward finally awakes and is again traumatized by the sight of Kim, realizing it was not a dream after all. The poor guy passes out once again, and Kim looks done with this dramatic ass. After that, Edward and Kim seem baffled as they wonder how they ended up in this world. While Kim suspiciously asks him why he's here in this world, a strike of terror runs through Edward as he reckons that this bastard is planning to kill him again once he finds out the secret of his revival. But our boy assures him that he doesn't plan on killing him, and Edward asks him if it's a promise. Saying that he can't promise anything, Kim reminds him that he has already paid the price of his betrayal. Chills run down his spine as Eddie gets reminded of his horrible death and speculates that he's trying to kill the others who betrayed him, clarifying that he will not help him. But then Mr. Kim lets out that it's unfair he only killed Eddie and his squad, while the General Lighting and the others who were part of his plan are still alive. Like the sharp monster he is, he persuades Eddie by telling him now that they both are gone, those people must have taken the credit. Hitting the bullseye, Kim reminds him that everyone is living a good life except him. Just as planned, this triggers Eddie as he ruminates how he worked his ass off to catch Mr. Pet Shop. Yet he's the only one stuck in this barbaric world. Letting go of his past self as Eddie Montoya, he reminds himself that now he's Prince Edward Grand Contime of the Elmwood continent and agrees to work together with Kim. As they shake their hands, Edward, who is also a smartass, learns about Kim's goal. He ponders that his goal is to return to Earth and kill those who betrayed him. So if they find a way to send him back, Kim will kill those bastards for him, and this world will be safe. While the prince allows him to play a supporting role in this grand plan, our boy reckons that having Edward around will be helpful. He's the prince, and the quality of information will be much improved. Not to mention that he can also find a way back to Earth. It looks like these bastards plan on using each other. After that, Kim informs Edward about his assassination, and the prince guesses it might be the old man. As our boy thinks that he's taking it better than he thought, Edward lets out that he is used to this. The prince then rises and informs him that they have a coming-of-age ceremony to attend, adding that his status is important if Kim wants him to help. The next scene takes us to the story of the first king, Edward the Great, 300 years ago, who stayed in an inn on the outskirts of Carnargo during a hunting trip. It is revealed that the king was profoundly impressed with the innkeeper's services and granted him the title of Baron. This was the beginning of the Santo Carnargo Hotel and the source of power for the House of Baron Carnago. With the backing of the royal family, the House of Baron Carnargo grew to be one of the 5 most powerful families on the continent. As long as the royal authority existed, the House of Baron would flourish, and the day the royal family fell, the House of Carnargo would follow. Later, one of the assassins plans to find the prince and assassinate him. At that moment, one of the guards informs the old man that they have located the prince, and he instructs the guard to bring him back to the manor. While the boy who was planning to assassinate the prince seems to scare his pants off already, the guard reveals that the prince has come to them himself. Witnessing the prince standing outside the gate along with Kim, the old man asks the Highness if he's all right, saying they will save him in no time. But the prince commands him to withdraw the troops and unveils that he was attacked by an assassin last night. He confesses that he was lucky enough to be saved by his secret guardian knight, Mr. Kim. Unfortunately, they had to flee because they were outnumbered by the attackers, and the old man gets flustered, asking if he's certain. But the assassin warns the old man not to be fooled as it's evident that the kidnapper threatened the prince. Upon hearing this, Edward mutters if they are suggesting that he made this all up and yells out his name as Edward Grand Conton, the descendant of Edward the Great and heir to his name. Reminding them who he is, the prince makes it clear that he isn't intimidated by some threat, as they thought he wouldn't be able to stand his ground. Evoking that harboring such thought is treason on its own, the old man is astounded by the prince's attitude. He speculates that the knight's armor may look crude and the red dragon scales underneath the armor, assuming that he's not an ordinary kidnapper. The prince then commands the troops to arrest the old man and his underlings. As they are tied down, Edward approaches one of the assassins and reveals that the House of Carnargo, one of the 5 most powerful families in the kingdom, knows all the secrets of the kingdom that the others don't. He grabs his shoulder and utters that one of them is torture. The prince, with a evilish smirk, assures the assassin that he won't die peacefully. The assassin is scared witless and reckons how his plan was flawless. Just then, the secret knight of the prince walks toward them, and the assassin blames him for everything, asking who he is. That's when Kim takes off his armor and reveals his bear face. While the assassin recognizes that it's the same bear from earlier, Kim winks at him as the poor guy is dragged away by the guards, calling him a monster. The boy then narrates that he stole some old pieces of armor from the nearby village and found a log. He coated the armor with slime mucus and changed it into mystium. He ate in the dragon's nest. It turns out that slime was more useful than he thought because that's how he tricked the Baron into believing that he's a secret guardian knight. The Baron then lets out that the traitors cracked under torture and revealed their secret identity, calling themselves messengers of death. Thinking that those scoundrels were pretending to be the prince's attendants, Baron then asks Sir Kim if he knows something about those men. While Kim decides to tell him what he and Edward discussed and get their stories straight, he tells Baron that he has heard about them from his last night, and further confesses that the second queen, Devours, was actually poisoned rather than being ill. Hearing this, Baron loses it as he hears this news and gets mad, ready to make them pay for who killed the queen. But our boy gets behind him in the blink of an eye and puts his hand on his shoulders, telling him not to underestimate them since they are people who assassinate higher-ups. While the old man is scared to death as he feels his odd strength, Kim manages to convince the Baron to leave this job in his hands since the prince has found a clue so it will be dealt with soon. As our guy is about to leave, the old man pleads with him to protect the prince, while the knight assures him that he can count on him, presuming that he will keep the prince alive until everything is settled for him. Later, Kim and Eddie seem to be traveling somewhere in the carriage. As they travel, our boy asks his partner about the lead he found about the messenger of death. The prince informs him that it was a lie, and he does not need any clues since he already knows who they are, adding that they're traveling to the exact place where they are. Kim seems to be curious. Edward tells him that it will be much more exciting and he'll meet the ringleader once they're back in the capital. With that, he asks Kim about what he wanted to ask him about earlier. It comes about that Kim is confused about the status tab and asks about it from the prince. While our guy assumes that it's because he's not from his world, Edward finds it strange as he has a status tab of his own. The prince then elucidates that the status tab is not only limited to people but every organism in this continent has it, and with the identity skill, he can look at others' status tabs. Edward lets out that he also has that skill and saw Kim's status tab when he used it earlier on him. To check it out, the prince uses his identity skill again, but fails to see Kim's status tab. After giving it a thought, he asks Kim to change into some other animal as he wanted to check something. Our guy then transforms into a grizzly bear, but the prince interrupts him and tells him to change into a creature from this world. As soon as Kim transforms into an orc, Edward witnesses his status tab and concludes that the status tab doesn't work on Kim since he's from Earth, but when he transforms into something from this world, it works. In the meantime, they test out all the monsters, like a lizardman's claw, a troll's skin, a fatal bite's scales, and a hard wolf's fangs, and keep repeating the process until the status tab no longer changes while the prince makes a freaky face, seeing that our guy had quite the feast there. After a few days, they finally reach their destination, and the prince asks our guys if he's ready to fight since they're going to meet the leader of the assassins, warning him not to get too surprised. Upon reaching the palace entrance, the gate opens, and they witness the leader of assassins, the king himself, which leaves Kim with no other choice but to be shocked. As the prince greets his father, the king seems to know what happened to the prince, and is happy to see him back in one piece. However, the king is lost in the thought of this little rat who managed to escape death, while Edward informs his father that it is all thanks to the attendants he assigned. Thinking that the attendants were more like assassins, Mr. Kim could feel the tensions running high between the father and son. The king then calls for Sir Kim and utters that he has never had him in his title, the secret guardian knight. As the tension rises high, Kim reckons if the king is trying to intimidate him, but our boy stays relaxed, and the king seems to be impressed by him, saying that he has the guts befitting a knight. He then asks Edward to gift the knight to him. but his son apologizes and clarifies that he has to decline his offer for 2 reasons. The prince states his 2 reasons, one of which is that Sir Kim is not an object to be gifted and does not possess him as Kim is his friend. He then confesses that he is best friends with Sir Kim, and although he is the second eldest prince who doesn't have an older brother, they have sworn to be brothers. Smirking, Edward then taps Kim's shoulder, and they both seem to be nailing the brother act. But the king slams his hands on the throne, and anger gushes through him as he watches the brotherly love and instructs them both to get out of his sight. After that, Prince Edward seems to be drinking wine and thanks his brother Kim. Drunk, he laughs hysterically for making his father terrified after telling him how a mysterious knight of unknown origin covered in the kingdom's secret source, Mystium, came strolling into the palace. He thanks Kim for being able to humble the old man for once and gives him an enchanted suit of armor. While our boy guesses that he never won up to the old man before, Edward agrees to him and discloses that his father has been training orphans nationwide as soon as they reach the age of 10. After teaching them basic servant tasks to gather intel and assassination, he plants these trained orphans into the household of royal families and then uses them to eliminate any obstacles in his path. He adds that the old man was able to claim the throne through such tactics, though he was only 4th in line. Furious, Edward shatters the wine glass as he came up with his idea first and calls the old man son of a bitch. After that, the evil prince feels assured after informing the king of his sworn brother and anticipates that behind that calm facade, the old man was about to shit his pants. Meanwhile, he feels overjoyed for doing that to his father. Someone comes bursting into the room. She turns out to be his sister, who complains about him being rude to his father and rushes towards Edward. However, Sir Kim blocks her path and instructs her not to move. The princess lashes out at the knight, but Kim, being a drop-dead serious, clarifies that it's the prince's private quarters and she's trespassing without even knocking. As she tries to talk back, Kim pulls out his sword and aims straight at her neck, uttering that he won't ask her a second time. Trembling with fear, the princess trips to the ground, and at that moment, Edward rushes to his sister, asking if she's all right. Edward becomes the sweetest man alive and appeases his sister, Eleanor, who seems to be sobbing. He then escorts her back to the room and tells her to talk later. As soon as he closes the room, he calls her a despicable wench. After that, Kim asks him if she is his little sister, and that's when Edward discloses that his sister bestowed the power of the goddess, adding that she will be the first to be eliminated when he becomes king. It is then revealed that Eleanor Grandcontinet is the youngest of the 3 surviving children of the reigning king, Edward IV. The princess was gifted by the goddess with the power to go wherever she wishes. But it comes about that Eleanor is romantically in love with Edward, the reincarnation of Eddie Montoya, and he's her half-brother. Thinking that the situation is absurd, our guy asks out of curiosity if he likes the princess back, but Edward, who seems to be losing his nerve, tells him to stop with his sick jokes. The prince then reminds him about Queen Devours, the second queen who was poisoned by his sister's mother, the first queen who invited her to a deadly party. Well, the plot twist turns out to be that the second queen was Edward's mother. The prince reveals that the first queen had Eleanor after killing his mother and becoming the king's new favorite. Upon hearing this, Kim sums it up that his sister was born out of the death of his mother, which is kinda gruesome. Our boy then asks him why he's fighting the king if he didn't kill his mother, to which Edward tells him that has to do with the firstborn son. But Edward stops and makes it clear that he only talks about the firstborn son if he's here with them, or if he has granted his permission. While Kim gets curious about why he has been hiding their secrets after all this time, the prince lets out that he has no other choice as he made an oath to the goddess. Done with enough chattering, Edward then sets his hair and tells his brother that they should get moving. As they walk, the knight asks him if he doesn't need a plan for the assassins. The prince lets out with the coming-of-age ceremony. He's proven himself fit to be the next king, which means that the king can't just kick him out as he pleases. He first plans on taking care of the old buffoons loyal to the king so he can win over the prime minister, who is in control of the kingdom's finances. Just as he is planning, Edward bumps into someone and bursts out in anger for daring to stand in the prince's way. However, it appears to be none other than his brother. The next scene takes us to the king's narrative, where he seems to be contemplating about Edward and his sworn brother. He reminisces on the truly remarkable plan he made. The king assassinated all his brothers one by one, removing the obstacles on his path to the throne. According to him, so-called brothers are nothing, but they are still obstacles to be eliminated. Infuriated, he seems to be pissed off at little rat Edward, who has a sworn brother and assumes that he's doing this to humiliate him. The old man's plan to seize the crown was a success. However, he may set a terrible precedent. He plans on creating a better pattern, and ponders about his children who have passed the selection process and were educated for their purpose. His eldest son, who is righteous and wise so that he could rule the kingdom justly. his second eldest son, who is a copy of his father so he can eliminate anything standing in the way of his firstborn's rule, and lastly, his daughter, beautiful and smart, who is destined for an arranged marriage. Unfortunately, his son's talents were beyond what he needed for his plan. His son Edward was far too cunning for his own good and hated his own people, while his eldest son was too righteous and was selected by the goddess to be her warrior. Just like that, the firstborn of the Grand Canton royal family was gone, and the only children left behind were his sly, cunning son and capable daughter. Clenching his fist, the king would rather his daughter take the throne than that devious snake Edward, concluding that he must never be the king. The scene then flips to Edward, who gets up and bows to the warrior. While the warrior informs his brother to come to the audience chamber as they have some urgent matter to discuss, Kim is shocked as a warrior who is the most virtuous and righteous is the chosen one by the goddess herself. Our boy recognizes that the warrior is the kingdom's firstborn son and predicts that he must be powerful to be protected by the goddess herself, hoping that he better not get in his way. Arriving at the audience chamber, the king and Edward are displeased to see each other again, and the old man greets the warrior with open arms, intending that he must have been the king. The warrior thanks the majesty for the warm welcome and cuts to the chase, revealing that the goddess bestowed him with the power of holy light. As everyone is quite astounded, the warrior plans on leaving on an expedition in 1 week's time after receiving a response from the church and asks the kingdom to support his cause with its military. Smirking, the king gladly supports the warrior, saying it's their duty. On the contrary, Edward doesn't take this so well and slams his hand out of anger as the old man gets him real good. Mumbling that the Demon King ruined his plans, Kim asks him what he's talking about. That's when the prince realizes that he doesn't know how things are around here and reveals that demons have been hostile to humans from the start, with their ruler being the Demon King. Through mediation with the goddess, the two races must maintain a balance even if they are hostile towards one another. Furthermore, if the scale tips to one side, the goddess creates a warrior on the opposite side, and if the balance is not maintained despite the warrior's efforts, she will bestow them with the power of holy light. In other words, the power of holy light gives the warrior the right to slay the other side's king. Similarly, the Demon King also has the right to be treated in a manner befitting his title. However, the warrior with the power of holy light can slay the Demon King without fear of retaliation. After this long story, our guy still doesn't understand what he means. Then Edward clarifies that the power of holy light bestowed upon the warrior puts humanity in danger. As a member of the royal family who is about to succeed to the throne, it becomes his responsibility to fight in the war. As cunning as he is, Edward already knows that the old man will fight on the front lines, and even if he manages to make it out alive, he will make some sort of scheme to throw him out of the kingdom. The following day, the king commands Prince Edward to defeat the Demon King with the warrior. To save his pride, the prince confidently bows to the king's command, uttering that he will gladly give his life in service of the divine warrior. Upon hearing this, the audience is impressed by the prince's so-called honor and loyalty, while the king puts on a cunning smirk. Later, Eleanor witnesses her half-brother Edward leaving the palace and cries for him. Meanwhile, Edward drops his act of being goody-two-shoes, and he commands his brother Kim to get the hell out of this dump. Leaving the palace, Kim appreciates the prince for taking it better than he expected. There's not much he could do anyway. Edward, who seems annoyed, says that he just has to defeat the Demon King and kill that old bastard, referring to his father. He then asks Kim about the things outside, and he informs the prince that they are planning something as they close in on the carriage. Being sure that the old man wouldn't let him go this easily, the prince asks for the location, and Kim reports that someone is approaching from behind. He's going to try to disable the protective barrier, asking Edward if he should stop him. The prince refuses and lets them try it. Moments later, one of the guards breaks the protective barrier, and with Phase 1 being a success, they proceed with Phase 2. Two guards on both sides of the carriage prepare a fireball attack, while the driver gets the signal to jump off the carriage. As two of the guards fall off, the carriage suddenly crashes and slows down. Aiming the fireball attack on the carriage, one of them mistakenly strikes the fireball at the other guard. Inside the carriage, Kim seems to have transformed himself into a monster and peeks outside. Edward is saved by Kim, who has now turned into a giant monster, and the prince is quite surprised to see him every time. Our guy makes a classic entrance and tells him now the monster is on his side, so he should get used to it. As they move forward, the knights, who seem to be blocking their way, are startled to see a monster. The monster then lets out a roar, making the horses go berserk. As one of the knights tries to cast a spell on the horses, the others decide to complete their mission first and fix the horses' minds later. Just as they run towards the monster, to their surprise, the monster breathes fire at them and burns the knights to death. Spitting fire at them, Kim himself is astonished by the powerful dragon fire and gets proud for using it for those orcs instead of facing the dragon head-on. It turns out that he has killed the knight's general, which makes them more angry. While one of them stabs his sword on the monster's arm, the attack doesn't seem to affect him. The dragon monster then grabs the horse by the tail and flings them away with full strength. Watching their fellow knights getting whacked badly, they retreat immediately and plan to alert everyone at once. As they scamper away, the knight promises to come back for their general's body. However, they are attacked by a quantum ray from behind, and it emerges to be Edward. While Kim asks him if it is magic, the prince seems to have used light magic for long-range shooting and reveals that he was born with the attribute of light. Being sarcastic, our guy is surprised by Edward's light magic and finds it ironic for someone who's been hiding in the dark. The next scene switches to the village, where our boy narrates that he and the prince have been traveling for 2 days on horseback and eventually arrive in the village where they were supposed to meet with the warrior's men. Meanwhile, the prince is having lunch. Kim lets out that this nonsense would have been avoided if he had left the palace with the warrior. But Edward elucidates that if he was the warrior, they wouldn't have the chance to kill him, and seems pretty confident that the old man arranged the schedule that way on purpose. In the meantime, the prince asks brother Kim if he has any questions, and it looks like our boy has a lot going on in his mind. He questions that humans possess the power of holy light, and that would make the fight one-sided, adding that it would be a sin for the demons to harm the divine warrior. Edward briefly responds that it's okay to kill the warrior bestowed with the power of holy light because the goddess is fair, and everybody gets the same immunity that the power grants. He adds that the goddess will not punish the demon king if he kills the warrior. However, that has never happened in history. And if the demon manages to kill the human warrior, that means humanity's reign will end since the superior race would have won. Listening to this, Kim puts on an evilish smirk and concludes that it's survival of the fittest, like what he's been doing for most of his life. While Edward asks him why he is smiling, as it has nothing to do with him, he warns Kim not to interfere with his plans, calling him a bastard. But being sworn brothers, our guy assures him that they still have a contract. The prince then lets out a sigh of relief and appreciates him for being a monster with good morals, while Kim asks him if he knows any other monsters. The prince then mentions a monster called a saintess, who is a real piece of work. At that moment, someone appears from behind and asks Edward to elaborate. Well, it turns out to be the saintess. Freaking out, the prince clarifies that she must have misheard. Calling her a monster, the saintess seems kind of pissed off. To piss her even more, the prince calls her delusional and tells her that it must be tiring to take every personal insult thrown at her and think that it extends to the whole group. Not holding back, saintess backfires and says that the prince is not as perfect as he seems, asking Edward to come by the temple someday, and they will put him back in his place. When the prince tells her to be familiar with her place under his foot, the prince seems to cross the line, enraging the saintess as she makes the whole place shake. While Edward is startled, the saintess plans to take this outside and warns the prince to prepare his funeral arrangements. As they continue to bicker, the people start gossiping about the prince and the saintess brawling in the streets when suddenly Kim shouts at them to be silent. He then throws gold towards them to shut their mouth, commanding that they never heard or saw anything here. After that, the people get busy collecting the gold, and Kim reminds the prince that cleaning his mess isn't part of the contract. It is then revealed that the saintess is a warrior created by humans, and just like how the goddess creates a warrior, the temple uses blessings and magic to create a saintess. Unlike a goddess who can create a warrior in a heartbeat, it requires 10 long years for a temple to create a single saintess. In addition, the cost is equally high, and therefore they are only able to produce one. But the completed saintess is truly invincible, as her bones are made of blessed magical metals, her muscle mass is extended to the extreme, and she has superhuman physical abilities. The scene then takes us to Edward's flashback when he first saw the saintess at the age of 6 and saw potential in her. He planned to make her his royal guard, but the temple took her away from him. Yanking out his flashback, the prince questions whether he can beat her in the combat. Kim walks outside and witnesses the prince fighting with the saintess. As both seem to be hopping mad, he asks them to stop as the warrior will be here soon. The saintess finally leaves, saying that she has preparation to do anyway, while Edward is not done yet as he plans to get her next time. Just then, our guy calls him out and grabs the prince by the neck, reminding him that he agreed to be his knight and not his nanny. Giving a deadly stare through his armor, Kim warns him not to further annoy him with his foolish behavior. He then releases the poor prince, who starts coughing and leaves. Later, the warrior arrives, and Kim cannot help but ponder that he came on foot, didn't soar through the skies, and even looked like an ordinary knight. In the meantime, the saintess then greets him, and the warrior is glad to see Edward, looking that he made it here safely. While the prince assures him that the journey wasn't much complicated, aside from a few minor exceptions, the warrior introduces himself to the secret guardian knight Kim. As they shake hands, Edward seems to be pissed off at him, and our guy looks at him, thinking that he's acting like a little kid as he's still pouting about earlier. After that, the warrior informs them that the situation hasn't changed as the goddess hasn't taken the power of holy light. Admitting that the Demon King will be exceptionally powerful compared to his predecessors, he points out that there's no guarantee they all will make it out alive if they go down this path. The warrior then asks them if they are still willing to follow him, to which they all agree, including Sir Kim, as he is the prince's guardian knight. Striking his sword on the ground, the warrior declares the formation of the order to take down the Demon King when suddenly someone enters the scene. It appears to be a demon, snickering as he had been waiting for this moment. Shortly the warrior spots him. The demon is Francis de Freyroad, the general arrogance of the 7 deadly generals. The weird-looking demon witnesses the humans seeking fit to declare war in the demon territory, which leaves him with no choice but to fight. The demon rings the big bell, causing an uproar among the civilians. Disturbed by the deafening noise, the warrior asks the demon to stop harming innocent civilians. However, Francis makes it inevitable that this village is their territory, and there are no longer civilians here, only servants loyal to the Demon King. Abruptly, many wolf demons begin to appear and are commanded to kill the humans. It is then revealed that werewolves are the lowest class demons that increase their number by infecting humans, and those who have turned cannot return to being humans. Those werewolves are forced to be puppets of high-class demons until their lives are bled dry. Meanwhile, Francis, the general arrogance, reckons that these lowly werewolves won't bring down the order and gets on with his real task. He then witnesses Prince Edward fight the wolf with his light magic and notes that he has evasion tactics like an acrobat. Moving on to the Saintess, who's mastered all manner of spells, and her fighting style is brute strength. While the demon notes the warrior's style, which is by the book, an innocent child who seems to be infected by the wolves attacks him, and the warrior halts for a second. As he kills the wolf, Francis notes all the tactics and decides to head back. However, he realizes that one of them is missing, and that's when our guy discreetly appears behind him. Finally feeling the presence of someone, a strike of terror runs through Francis, who is left in disbelief about what has just happened. He wonders how he can get behind him, and it's impossible as he would have sensed it. Thinking it's preposterous, he reminds himself that he's the general arrogance of the 7 deadly generals. At that moment, Kim stabs him with the sword, eliminating Francis. The scene then switches to the other demon generals, who has been informed of the death of General Arrogance. They seem to make fun of him for how confident he was, and call him General Reckless. The other demon supposes that his death wasn't in vain, as they now know that the human vermin are skilled enough to take down one of the generals. But it turns out to be a joke as the demon concludes that Francis was the weakest of them all. One of the demons announces that the even warrior is tied down by a goddess, affirming that human destruction is inevitable. The demon is certain that humans cannot defeat them because they've exceeded the limits set by the goddess. It seems that the battle comes to an end, resulting in the execution of Francis, one of the 7th demon generals of the Demon King, as Kim notifies the warrior about it, and the werewolves that have been dealt with. The prince uses his recovery magic to examine the demon's face closely, and wonders if he is one of the 7th generals who manage information, which means he must have quite the authority. He inspects why Francis would use weak werewolves, and was even too defenseless, but he is relieved that they were able to take this demon out. Edward also becomes suspicious of the situation, wondering if the real enemy is lying low. Meanwhile, Kim wonders if the werewolves would do him any good. He then remembers that when he ate the lizardmen, his compatibility with reptiles went up. Similarly, eating werewolves should increase his compatibility with mammals too. He then munches on the wolves, excited to see the results. The prince then walks towards Kim and asks him if he's going to eat these wolves, getting panicked as he reminds him that there are other people here as well. They both then divert their attention to the dead body of the demon in front of them, and the prince tells Kim that this demon was used as a pawn by the Demon King, assuming that he was no longer needed. While he asks Kim's thoughts about this, our guy lets out that intel is crucial in all scenarios. That means if the Demon King did get rid of the general in charge of the intel, then he believes that the demon society is no longer the society the humans knew before. As the prince agrees with him, he finds it hard to believe that the Demon King would simply dump his intel man without a massive shift in their societal structure. This makes him more curious as to what happened in the Demon Kingdom. That's when our guy concludes that there might be a third one that came from the Earth just like them. This leaves the prince in utter shock as he processes the information for quite a bit. Quitting the drama, Eddie makes sure that the warrior and Saintess are busy taking care of the bodies and asks Kim to listen to him carefully. Smirking, he reveals his evil idea of taking out the warrior and the Saintess if there really is a third one in the Demon Kingdom. After that, a huge ditch is dug to bury the dead bodies of the werewolves as the mud is thrown on top of them and their graves are covered. The Saintess makes a prayer for the dead while in the meantime the carriages arrive. The Saintess then asks the warrior who will be holding the horse's reins since Kim only drives vehicles with an engine. The warrior's sacred code forbids him from driving, whereas the saintess does not know how to drive a carriage. Therefore, the prince ends up driving the horse carriage. Driving the carriage, Prince Edward finds this like a dragon quest, and Kim wonders what that is. They end up having a little bickering session as they curse each other. Our guy speculates that the prince is trying to tell him something because he's talking in Russian, uttering to get to the point. The blonde-haired guy reveals that he knows of a way to kill the warrior, which makes our boy wonder if the warrior can really be killed. He has encountered all sorts of living things, and he can't be killed easily, or he's not even sure if he can be killed. He felt it when he met the warrior back at the village, and he slayed most of the werewolves only using his sword, not once using his skills. Kim believes his advanced abilities make him a tough opponent. However, since our fella has numerous specialized skills, it is possible to defeat him. That's when Eddie discloses that the qualifications of being chosen a warrior include only the most righteous, the most just, and the most good-hearted will be selected. Still, if he does not fulfill any of these, the warrior is punished and will be weakened enough for Kim to take him on. Our guy asks his fellow if he has a plan, to which the prince denies, saying they don't need a plan in the first place and just have to go with the flow. In the meantime, their conversation is interrupted by a saintess who asks the prince about what he's talking about with Kim. The prince gets pissed, and he insults the saintess, and with that, they both start bickering while our guy is so done with them and decides to switch places with her. While in the carriage with the warrior, he asks Kim about how he became the prince's guardian knight, which makes our guy wonder why he would ask that. The warrior then reveals new information about the prince being his little brother. Upon finishing his sentence, the warrior feels a stinging pain because he violates the sacred code that dictates that the warrior must not have favorites. Grasping Edward's plan, our guy says to him that he would have avoided this pain if he hadn't asked this question, to which the blonde-haired man replies that this question was worth the pain he went through. Well, our guy finds it ironic that the older brother cares for his younger brother, whereas Edward is planning to kill his older brother. Looking forward to seeing what happens, Kim then reveals that he's under a contract to protect Edward, and in return, the prince will find a way to grant his wish. As they're talking, the warrior asks him if that's the case, his goal must be to receive the reward for slaying the Demon King. He realizes that the wish he's talking about is not an easy one. Hearing this, our guy seems to be unaware of the reward that the warrior is talking about, and asks more about it. It is revealed that the fortress city is located at the very edge of the Grand Canton Kingdom, whereas the Demon Kingdom is situated in a mere 12 miles of the fortress city. They decide to stay in a tavern for the night as the warrior heads out to help those in need, and the saintess leaves to inform the church about her safe arrival, asking Kim to keep an eye on the prince so that he doesn't cause any trouble. This pisses off the blonde-haired guy, and he tells her to go to hell. As soon as they leave, Kim notifies his fellow about the new piece of information he has about the reward for slaying the demon, and the prince is more than delighted to hear about this. The boy then narrates that the goddess bestowed the power of holy light on the warrior as the divine chance to slay the Demon King. When that duty is fulfilled, the goddess will grant A for each individual who took part in it. The blonde-haired boy thinks it's too good to be true, and our guy assures him that it's the truth. Upon hearing this great news, the prince starts chugging down beer and announces it's on him, while Kim orders a beer for himself as well. The prince apparently drinks too much beer since he does not feel good, and pukes while his partner finds it gross. Just like the prince, other people in the tavern also feel dizzy, and then something unexpected happens as Edward's veins begin to pop out. The warrior, on the other hand, is busy helping the civilians. He carries a wooden barrel as the middle-aged man thanks him for his kindness, and confesses that the warrior is just as the rumors say, calling him a spineless son of a bitch. Getting the gist of the situation, the warrior takes his sword out and questions the man before him about who he is. The man tells him not to worry because they already know everything about him. Meanwhile, he wonders who he is referring to, only to look behind and see all the civilians coming towards him, as they seem to be possessed and in control. Well, it turns out to be one of the 7 deadly demon generals, Ferris de Glutarod, who has all the civilians under his control, revealing that he tainted the water supply with the eggs of a parasite that once is digested, grows inside the body and takes over the host's mind. Sadly, those infected people have no choice but to obey every order given by the demon. In other words, these people are innocent civilians who are being controlled, but the warrior has to kill them in order to reach the demon himself. It seems that the demon is pushing the warrior to go against his sacred code. He asks the warrior how far he is willing to bend the code, which states that he must not harm any innocents. Listening to this, the warrior is frustrated that the demon knows his weak points and tries to find a way to get up on the roof to gain high ground and spot the demon. However, his moves are already predicted when he witnesses his companions, also controlled by the parasite, on the roof. The prince speaks to the warrior, telling him that his move was predictable, and shows the demonstration of his greed by stretching his arm in front of Sir Kim, who breaks his arm with one move. The warrior is left shaken by the heinous act of Kim, who just harmed the prince whom he vowed to protect. But it doesn't end here when he breaks Edward's neck and chokes the saintess, making them fall unconscious. Even the demon thinks it has gone a bit too far, telling Kim to stop while our boy carries two of them and jumps from the roof. He justifies his actions to the warrior, asserting that it will prevent them from killing themselves, and instructs them to take care of his companions while he will take care of the demon bastard. One of the civilians, controlled by the demon, speaks up that Kim was fortunate enough to avoid his parasites, but his sentence is left incomplete as the guy kills him. Meanwhile, the warrior freaks out and reminds him that these are innocent civilians. This leaves the demon stunned since he never expected a knight to kill his own kind without hesitation. As one of the civilians agrees with the warrior so that they won't be killed, Kim is glad about the fact that they won't remember what he's about to do. With that, the ruthless monster runs toward the civilians while transforming his hands into the muscles of a troll and kills a good amount of innocent civilians in an instant. While the demon shit his pants and asks him to stop, reminding him that he's a knight who shouldn't be killing innocent civilians, Kim responds to him to stop being a hypocrite, and he shouldn't have controlled them in the first place. Scared to death, the parasite demon gives up and surrenders to Kim, uttering that he will release the civilians and go back to the demon kingdom. As Kim kills a bunch of other civilians, the demon shouts, getting annoyed and wondering if he has hurt him or not. But it emerges that our cunning main character was clearing his way since many people were blocking his path, finally spotting the demon hiding on top of the wall. Getting spotted, the parasite tries to escape immediately. The demon decides to run away, not caring about the warrior or anything else. But our boy catches him just in time and crashes him into a wall. As the demon is frightened and warns Kim to stay away, our guy confesses that he hasn't seen a creature like him before, and there isn't a single skill he has that matches with the demon's skill. Asking him to do him a favor, our guy, with an evil smirk on his face, lets out his tongue and prepares to devour him. The demon's life flashes through his eyes as he reckons that he hasn't encountered a creature like this ever before. He even poisoned the water supply with parasite eggs, and no living creature can live without water. Even if they resist, he has control over their companions. His plan was perfect in his point of view. But this bastard who harms his companions as a knight and goes off on a rampage, killing his own kind without a second thought, was something else that he never expected. But since the situation has come to this point, he has nothing to lose, and seems certain that Kim won't be able to fight off his powers as he has complete control, and just like that, he gets eaten by the knight. It is revealed to us that the demon tosses himself onto Kim's face and clings to him. Kim gulps the demon down his throat and burps, wondering if it just killed itself. He has eaten many parasites on Earth, but he wasn't able to gain any skills from a parasite that only controls insects and fish. However, this demon has the ability to control humans, so he might be able to use a proportion of its abilities. With that, he tests the skills and bites his troll's skin finger off, spitting it on the ground. While separating a part of his body, his finger starts to shake and takes the shape of a fish, which leads him to hypothesize that he can separate a part of his body and control it. But there are limits to its size and length that he can control. Thinking that he might be able to develop this skill if he eats more hybrid creatures, the guy decides to start with the cleanup as he peeks down at the civilians. In the Demon King's castle, the demon generals gather to discuss Gluttony getting defeated so easily. As they question about any chances of his survival, one of them mentions that he's dead since all the parasitic samples in his lab have perished as well. The demon then lets out that Gluttony was a strong demon. Although he was behind the times, he was befitting for the four great kings as one of the demons who wonders how the hell did he die. It's reported to them that some monster killed the humans under Gluttony's control and then went after him, unveiling that it's the knight who's tagging along with the prince. With Gluttony and the four kings excluded, the demon decides to send Wrath, who can fight against the humans, but he's far too valuable to send off to face the warrior. He adds that Wrath specializes in dealing with large numbers of humans, so using him against the allied human forces would be more effective. However, one of the demons comes in and interrupts the conversation, announcing bad news. As soon as he hears about what happened to his brother, Gluttony, and everyone grows hushed, Wrath goes after the monster. On the other hand, the prince and his companions continue their journey, and we see the warrior thinking that Kim's method was the most effective for killing the demon. Curious, the warrior lets out that he could have avoided the unnecessary slaughter of the innocents with his strong skill set, given that those people were merely controlled by the demon. While our guy dumps the blame on the demon for all the damage, the warrior notices that there's not a trace of guilt on Kim's face for what he did. It's unbelievable for him to think Kim is the prince's secret guardian and considers him a demon. As the warrior is concerned about Kim's careless behavior, he suddenly hears the prince's voice, and the carriage comes to a halt. The warrior asks about the matter, while Edward seems terribly frightened upon seeing the creature in front of them. It emerges to Dracus de Lazorth, Wrath, who has come here to avenge his brother in arms, Gluttony. The big creature leans forward, and the ground shakes, scaring Edward and the Saintess to death. In the meantime, Kim steps out and asks the prince if he knows this creature, to which Eddie responds that he has read about it, but it's his first time seeing it in person. It is then narrated that 50 years ago, a demon warrior rode this monster into battle. He heard that it was twice as big as the dragon. Our guy calculates the length, wondering if this creature is twice as big as the dragon, then it will probably be 100 feet long, but it looks bigger than that. Wondering if there's an end to it, the prince informs him that it must have grown over the past 50 years because reptiles tend to keep growing throughout their life. Their conversation is interrupted by the Saintess, who exclaims that this isn't the time to marvel, and they need to figure out how to kill this monster. Abruptly, they all go quiet when they hear a weird noise, which appears to be the beast's spiked hammer-like tail, who swings it with full force and crashes his tail into the carriage. The giant demon wags its tail, which destroys the carriage, and all the members crash on the ground. Furious, the demon calls them puny insects and asks them who killed his comrades, determined to seek revenge. As the demon again strikes its tail towards them, they dodge the attack. In the meantime, the Saintess tells Edward that shield defense is his specialty, urging him to show what he's got. But the prince thinks it's absurd, as there's no way he can block that attack. He then points towards the warrior and asks if he can do anything with his parry skill, which is a counter-move to deflect attacks. The warrior refuses and says that the attacks are too powerful, suggesting the Saintess absorb the blow and then recover later. But it doesn't seem possible, and she won't have time to recover as she will be blasted to bits if she gets hit by that thing. While there's nothing they can do to stop it, the three of them look towards Knight Kim, being shy at first as he asks if they really think he can take on that giant creature. Our guy unveils that he has a plan. On the other hand, the demon reckons that even if his brother-in-arms were killed, from his experience, letting anger get the best of him is dangerous. While the scars from being ambushed by those humans still hurt, his tactics are perfected through trial and error. From determining the enemy's presence with his detection skill to sweeping the area so the enemy cannot hide and intercept when the enemy approaches, the demon is certain not to lose a single battle using his tactics, even if it is against a warrior. On the other hand, the Saintess seems to object to Kim's idea, thinking it's rather reckless. As our boy asks her if she got anything better, the warrior surmises if they run, that could put the cities in danger, so even if there's no hope of winning, they must fight. Just like that, the warrior runs towards the demon, and Kim prepares himself for the next move. Meanwhile, the warrior is fighting the creature. We get to know that the holy sword of the goddess reveals its ultimate power against evil creatures, and if it isn't facing evil, then it's just a regular sword. It appears that the beast's anger is fueled by anger that isn't evil or righteous, and as a consequence, the sword isn't showing its ultimate power. While the warrior keeps dodging the attack and draws closer to the beast, thinking that it won't be able to swing its tail from this close, unexpectedly, the demon's tail turns out to be flexible, whacking the warrior. Fortunately, the guy manages to avoid the full blow as his sword screeches through the ground, but he can't seem to stand. Watching the warrior lose hope, the demon asks him if this is all he's got, and thinks that his fellow demon Ferris lost to a weakling like him. As the beast assumes that the warrior is making quips before his doom, the warrior shouts, saying that he couldn't believe their plan worked to perfection. The scene then takes us back to 5 minutes earlier, where Kim reveals the only way to defeat the monster. He explains that the warrior will distract the beast while he approaches it from underground. Noticing that it has a scar on its underside, they plan to aim for it. But the warrior questions if he's confident this will work, and our boy confidently agrees, saying that he just has to distract him long enough. Kim ponders that the monster won't be able to detect him but might hear him digging underground, and that's how the warrior will act as bait. While the warrior decides to go with his plan, Kim asks why he trusts him, to which the guy responds that it's highly unlikely because, as a warrior, he has a lie detection skill. Our main character seems to be not lying this time and believes since the skills from this world won't work on him, he could lie to a warrior if needed, and plans on using it against him someday. The warrior then leaps towards the beast to distract him, and Kim attacks him from underground. With the power of almost every animal, digging underground was the easiest thing for him, with abilities like the muscles of a troll, body of a mole, and the claws of a dragon. A moment later, the beast finally detects Kim and gets shocked by his dragon's arm. Just like that, our boy leaped toward him with his dragon claws and burst inside his body. Kim successfully gets inside the beast's body, which appears to be too big for him to wander aimlessly. He checks out his new parasite skill, and they begin to scatter everywhere. To his surprise, the parasites seem to be feeding all the information back to him. Thinking that the skill has proven to be useful, our guy recalls that the parasite demon was friends with the beast, Putting on a evilish smirk, our guy wonders how cruel fate can be as the beast is dying at the hands of his own friend. At that moment, he senses something inside the monster's body. While ripping it apart, he finds an organ and jumps in for a feast. On the other hand, the warrior decides to attack, but he witnesses the monster crying out of pain and begs for help, screaming that his insides are burning. As the saintess winces in fear, thinking it's too cruel, Edward is surprised that his brother managed to pull it off. After that, the beast crashes down as it takes its last breath, and Kim splashes through its eyes, drenched in blood. Watching our guy mercilessly bursting out of the beast, the three of them are left speechless. On their way, Kim breaks the silence by asking about the matter, and Edward clarifies that they're just shocked by what he did back there. But our boy doesn't seem to care much as he got a valuable skill out of it. The boy then narrates the dinosaur monster isn't that valuable despite its size. It just had large muscles which he ripped with the help of his strong troll muscles and dragon scales and skin that were far superior. The hunt wasn't a complete loss. It was a win. First, he chewed on the monster's lungs, which were a powerful mass of muscles. Since the lungs require such a large amount of oxygen to support its behemoth size and are able to suck large amounts of air, that means it can also blow it back out with the same power. With those lungs, his dragon breath became more powerful. Secondly, it was blood vessels which had small heart-like organs attached to its arteries and veins. This allows him to keep pumping blood in his body even if his heart is destroyed. And lastly, he found something valuable, and thanks to this, he has the ability to fly. The next scene flips to the demon generals who get to know about Wrath being eliminated as well. Leaving just the 4 great kings, one of them laughs hysterically and lets out that everything seems to be going to the Demon King's plan, adding that the warrior will proceed to the Demon King's castle. Anticipating that now they have wiped the human villages, the warrior will try to destroy the source of the problem to avoid casualties. The demons seem to have succeeded in eliminating the relics of the bygone era without doing anything while leading the warrior to believe that he's slayed the Demon King's best generals. The demon general declares that it's time for humanity to perish. In this war, humanity will win if they behead the Demon King. However, the demon race must either destroy them or get them to surrender. The general further adds that humanity won't surrender as long as the warrior stands. With the warrior being blessed by the goddess herself, the demon concludes that in order for them to win this war, they have to destroy humanity. In simple words, they just need to annihilate humanity before the warrior slays the Demon King, and these are the wise words of their new Demon King. After that, all the demon generals pledge allegiance to their Demon King, the one who hails from another world. The scene then switches to the 4 of them passing through a rough area where the monster passed through. As they are walking, a demon appears and asks the humans to stop immediately. While more demon soldiers begin to emerge and surround them, they fight them off. As Kim slashes 2 demons, something grabs his attention and it appears to be a map. After dealing with the demons, Kim informs them about the map of the Demon Kingdom. He finds it on one of the demon soldiers. Inspecting the map, Edward lets out that all the roads lead to one point on the map, and all the roads are connected to the main battlefield. Meanwhile, the Saintess believes this map is for supply routes, and the warrior prepares to slay the Demon King now that they have the map. However, the prince looks at the village located in the mountains and finds it suspicious as it is connected to the main road despite having no strategic value. The Saintess guesses that Edward is suggesting this village might be the Demon King's main base and thinks that they should pay a visit. While the warrior instincts seem to be screaming at him, pointing out that the village is important, the warrior agrees to visit the place. 1 week later, they arrive at the village, and we see civilians controlled by the demons building weapons. Edward witnesses what he expected. The demon seems to be making weapons, but the warrior is hit by a realization and thinks about what he's supposed to do. That's when his brother tells him they must fulfill their sworn duties. As the prince says they have to kill the demons, the warrior grabs his shoulder and asks him if he's going to kill innocent civilians. Uttering that he sees no civilians here, Edward justifies that every civilian is involved in the war effort and making weapons. As the warrior stops him and questions what he's even thinking, in a flash the poor guy clutches his chest in pain. Edward calms him down and tells him not to break his sacred code. The prince then questions if killing the civilians is an act of evil, and the warrior, who still appears to be in pain, responds that massacres of civilians is not exactly a good thing. The prince believes that they're infiltrating the enemy's base to destroy their military facilities, kill their blacksmith, and cut off the enemy supplies to reduce the number of casualties. At that moment, the warrior questions himself and recalls his sacred code as a warrior, which is to always be just and righteous. Without any ado, Kim gets started with the mission, which makes the warrior helpless. This leaves him questioning his morality and slowly losing his sense of justice, of what is good or bad. With not a hint of emotions, our boy mercilessly kills the civilians, and it seems like he's the only one working his ass off because the warrior refused to fight anyone who didn't attack first. The Saintess went into a panic after witnessing a young demon die. While Edward has his hands complete taking care of her, Kim finds them all useless. Every single one of them. Later, the prince gets his hand on a gun and informs Kim about what they've been making here. Edward is delighted to see a Mauser pistol as they have got themselves a German gun fanatic, asking Kim if he realizes what it means, addressing him as brother. Wiping the blood off his face, our boy suspects that there must be a third one of them, but on the Demon King's side. In the meantime, the warrior interrupts them and asks if they find anything, to which Edward informs him that the Demon Kingdom is planning on drafting civilians into the war. As the warrior is shocked to hear this, the prince continues that an ordinary civilian can use this pistol on the battlefield with the simplest of instructions, and they were manufacturing these for that very purpose. After listening to him, the warrior leaves, and Edward appreciates Kim for his job well done. He rewards him with a bit of vacation and hands him the map to feast to his heart's content, marking the garrisons on the map. Meanwhile, our boy thinks it's more of a business trip. He seems exhilarated as he looks at the map with his feisty eyes, wondering if it would be the perfect opportunity to test his new skill. Suddenly, they hear a loud noise near the village, and Edward, putting on a cunning smirk, assumes things are going just as he planned. The scene then flips to the warrior, who appears to be releasing his anger by landing powerful punches. Crying his heart out, the poor guy seems helpless and thinks what he's supposed to do. The next scene takes us to the port city of the Demon Kingdom, Stuckfit, where we see a half-human and half-demon boy known as Midden working by carrying heavy sacks. After moving 20 sacks of gunpowder and 10 crates of coal, the boy heads out as he receives his wage, calculating the amount required for the rent and food for him and his little sister Myron. Letting out a deep sigh, Midden ponders his hard life and how he barely makes ends meet, but is determined to work hard. He is reminded of his sister Myron, who offered him a lollipop he bought for her on his way back home. The next day, the boy begins to work again and lifts the sacks on his shoulder, which somehow weigh less than yesterday. Assuming that he may have gotten stronger, Midden presumes he may be just a dockhand for now, but one day, he wishes to be one of the 7 deadly generals. The scene then flips to Kim, who narrates about the existence of the second brain in some larger dinosaurs, as speculated by the scientists. Their larger size meant a longer time for nerves to receive signals from the brain, so they hypnotize another brain located near the waist to assist the main brain. Kim was able to locate the second brain on the dinosaur beast when he turned his brain into that of another creature, recreating its nervous system. Therefore, even if it's a body part unique to that creature, he's able to use it freely without any practice. Still, he's never once used his brain to that extent, because there's a risk of losing control over his body to the original brain of the owner. However, if he uses this ability on the second brain, he can entirely change into another creature's brain without repercussions. In other words, he's able to fly by transforming the entirety of his body to that of a dragon's, with the exception of his brain. By merging the slimy scales of the lizardmen with the scales of a dragon, he exchanged the lizardman's slime with mystium slime. In addition, he enhanced his body with the lungs and blood vessels of dinosaurs, as well as troll's blood and bone marrow for regenerative abilities. With all these strengths combined, his body is stronger than ever with the powerful and dense muscles of the orcs, close to becoming the most powerful creature in the world. With a loud roar, the dragon starts attacking the village's demons with its fire breath. Panicked by the sudden attack, the demon runs for their lives when suddenly the dragon devours a fish-like demon, gulping it down. Witnessing the dragon, Midden scampers to save his sister and is glad about their room being close to the port, which means he will be able to save her. Unfortunately, the dragon flies towards where his room is and crushes the building. In an instant, the building is turned into rubble, while Midden stands there traumatized, trying to believe what he just saw with his eyes. As the boy's eyes wander around the broken piece of the building, he catches a glimpse of his sister's hand hanging out from under the rubble, which makes him go mad. He grabs a sword and runs towards the dragon, trying to stab him to death. But his strength is unmatched by the most powerful dragon as the sword shatters to pieces, and sadly, Midden gets devoured by the dragon. After that, Kim reckons that Edward marked all the places that manufacture and stockpile military supplies, surmising that the prince wanted to weaken the Demon King's military capabilities. Although it doesn't concern our guy anyway, he's thankful for the marked points on the map as he was able to eat a variety of creatures and is especially excited to try the abilities of the fish creature he ate. Getting back to business. 10 hours after the destruction of Stuckfit, the demons seem to be having a meeting in their conference room, discussing the loss in their city, including the immeasurable damage and the loss of supplies. Hearing that it was a dragon, one of the demons asks Sloth, the dragon demon, about her remark on the situation since she's one of their kind. Sloth finds it impossible because it's reported that during the 9 hours from dusk to dawn, the so-called dragon spewed fire no more than 50 times, and this feat is impossible unless it's the legendary Dragon Road. The three-eyed demon suspects Sloth when he says that the very dragon road is present here with them, but she glares at him and gets mad at him for accusing her. The demon seems to suggest that if the dragon road of demons exists with them, there can't be another legendary dragon, and gets interrupted by the demon general, Jealousy, who reminds them this isn't important. Instead, they should focus on how they should proceed. The demon general then reveals that the news of Stuckfit has spread through the kingdom. In a single day, that dragon has become the ultimate object of fear. If the 7 deadly generals were to eliminate this threat, it would raise morale in the kingdom. Other demons approve of this idea and praise him. Meanwhile, Sloth decides to go this time since this dragon of Stuckfit may be the same species as her, and she's ready to show what a real dragon looks like. In Kim's view, the attack on Harbor City was the most rewarding thing he has done since joining the warrior and his group. He consumed hybrid species such as fish and insect demons, and he was able to optimize his new dragon skills in dragon form. Thanks to his recent feast, he's able to understand his dragon form better. Reckoning if he keeps up with this progress, soon he will be able to reach his ultimate goal, which is becoming the apex predator. He glides over another village, ready to attack, as the demon first witnesses him. They mistake him for one of the demon generals, but soon they realize that it's the dragon of Stuckfit and start running for their lives. The dragon breathes fire all around the place, mercilessly eating and crushing all the living beings. Sloth, on the other hand, flies around searching for her opponent, and according to the reports, the dragon was spotted near the 6th Army Post an hour ago. Not knowing who that dragon is, she decides to put it in its place as soon as she finds it. While Kim causes insane destruction in just an hour, Sloth finally spots the dragon and sees him eating the dead, finding it crude. More importantly, she was told that it was a red dragon, but when she looked at the dragon with body parts of different creatures, she was bewildered. She then plans to use her ability, known as the Dragon Speak, which is the power of a dragon, to sow terror and bend opponents to their will. The sloth yells to stop, and moments later she realizes that her ability isn't working on Kim. This enrages her, and she finds it impossible to stop because her Dragon Speak ability can even bring down other dragons. While our guy seems to realize that she's stronger than the puny weaklings he has been dealing with, he clarifies that it would be best for her to abandon any hopes of controlling him with her power. He warns her if she tries to control him once again, then he will have no choice but to take appropriate countermeasures. Upon hearing this, her eye twitches with anger as she calls him insolent. Since she's very arrogant, her ego gets hurt, and she swears to throw him into the deepest despair. With that, they both start to fight, showing what they've got. After 10 minutes of fighting with their claws and loud roars, Sloth appears exhausted, with her dragon body throbbing in pain. She realizes that her opponent is holding his ground just by blocking her attacks the entire time, adding that she's never in her life seen a dragon this strong before. Kim, on the contrary, knows that even a dragon can't penetrate Mystium and Ogre's muscles, and if a powerful dragon like her can't do anything, then other creatures won't be able to leave more than just a scratch on him. After that, our guy decides to move on to his next experiment and remove the Mystium slime from his body. But as soon as he does that, Sloth instantly attacks him, knowing that his defenses are down, and bites his neck, ripping a piece of its skin apart. Taken aback by the sneak attack, Kim smashes her away. Using his super regenerative ability, he recovers his muscles, leaving her flabbergasted as she wonders what kind of creature he really is. Concluding his experiment with this form, Kim decides to spare Sloth's life in return for her contribution and tells her to go. But this makes her go crazy, as it triggers her ego again, and she decides to reveal the true powers of the legendary Dragon Road. Using her ability, the Condensed Drain Breath, she creates a ball of fire while our guy has no choice but to annihilate her. The legendary Road Dragon spits out something that looks like parasites and crashes to the ground, wondering what the hell is happening to her. That's when Kim reveals that it's his flesh that she swallowed. It turned into parasites and ate away her insides. With that, he warns her that she shouldn't be eating everything she sees and mocks her by muttering that she should be careful next time as there's no next for her. Meanwhile, Sloth reaches her end and dies. Someone reaches out to Kim using telepathy magic and pleads for his help. The next scene takes us to the warrior, who reveals his past story. The guy narrates that he's a disciple of a goddess and a time traveler from 10 years in the future. 10 years from now, the demons joined forces with the humans to fight against the monster of destruction. In the future, the monster devoured the 7 deadly generals, the Demon King, and all the 4 great kings, including the warrior himself. Reincarnated, the warrior travels 10 years back to the past and heads straight to the Great Forest, where he annihilates the slime, which would later evolve into the monster of destruction. By doing so, Sir Kim, who was performing his duty in the forest, was safe, and that's how he was able to save the prince's life, who was initially killed in the warrior's timeline. The warrior saved a life that was on the brink of death by changing the future, although he does not know what the future holds for him. Clenching his fist, the warrior doesn't seem to have any regrets about giving up the future he knew and killing the monster of destruction. However, there's one thing he regrets, which is not finding out more about the Demon King's army. If he had done more research, they wouldn't have been so powerless against the demon, or at the very least, would have discovered this demon's power, referring to one of the general demons, greed. The scene then switches to 30 minutes earlier, where the Saintess, the warrior, and Prince Edward continue their journey. While they're walking, the warrior asks the prince where he sent Sir Kim off, and he informs him that he sent Kim somewhere important, as Edward tells him that they will soon arrive at their next destination. They witness a demon standing in their path who welcomes the warrior's party. It turns out to be one of the 7 deadly generals, Greed, who welcomes them to the Grand Vegas, the city he rules. Being humble, Greed asks the warrior to stop the slaughter and fight in a peaceful way, but the prince objects and asks him what he's plotting. To clear the air, the demon general claims to decide the winner by playing a game. However, as the prince objects and thinks he is trying to trick them, the warrior immediately accepts the demon's proposal, contemplating that he has taken way too many lives in coming here and wants it to stop. Greed is more than happy to hear this and thinks that it was too easy to trick them. He then escorts them inside and addresses them as honored guests only for one night. While the game is about to begin, the other demons begin to gossip about witnessing the warrior's death here and hope humanity dies tonight. After that, the evil-looking Greed reveals that the game is poker, and Edward decides to go first, reckoning that he's already mastered poker back when he was undercover in the poaching group, and even that monster Kim was no match for him. The demon then places his conditions, uttering that if the prince wins, he will grant him safe passage, but if he loses, Greed will take his soul. Moments later, Edward slams his hand on the table and accuses the demon of being a scam. As the poor guy shakes in anger, Greed reminds the prince that he said it's not a scam as long as he's not caught. Meanwhile, Edward is left in disbelief, saying this round doesn't count, and gets determined to find the trick he played on him. Nonetheless, the prince loses, and as promised, Greed takes his soul. While the demon takes out his soul and puts it inside a coin, the Saintess freaks out and asks the demon how dare he steal Eddie's soul, calling him a bastard. That's when Greed reveals that it's a unique skill that carries out the agreement made beforehand, no matter what, known as the absolute execution. As the Saintess tries to whack the demon, Greed clarifies that such barbaric violence doesn't work here, not while his second skill, a complete zone of peace, is in effect. Being pure evil as he is, the demon speculates that with these two skills, no one can beat him at the card table. Tricking the Saintess, Greed guesses that Edward is important to her, which makes her flustered. The demon can see the emotions written on her face and read her like an open book. He then asks the Saintess to play a game with him if he wants the prince back, betting Edward's soul, and asks the girl to bet her soul. As the warrior tries to stop, saying it's too reckless, the Saintess assures him she can do it, adding that she is called the ace of the convent for a reason. Confused, the warrior questions if there's gambling in the convent, and the Saintess utters what he thinks she did during those long winters as the only girl at the convent. Throwing the cards away, the girl decides to play with dice, and unexpectedly, after a while, Greed takes her soul as well as she loses. While the demon nearly loses to the Saintess and mumbles he hasn't found a match like her in a long while, the warrior is left alone. Greed then moves on to the warrior to play the same trick and asks if he wishes to play to get his companion's souls back, adding that he just needs to bet his soul. But the warrior goes into a state of panic, thinking that he has never gambled before. Contemplating that he's never gambled in his life, the warrior is stuck in between as he can't leave his comrades like that. Just then, someone smashes a demon through the door as he comes crashing onto the floor. As Kim makes an iconic entry, the warrior can't hide his happiness when he witnesses him, and Greed welcomes his new guest, who is quite a hothead. While the demons believe that he has walked into his death, our guy peeks at the soulless Saintess and Edward, thinking that they are useless. He decides to wrap it up quickly and then get back to his real mission. He clenches his armored hand, but Greed asks him if he's planning to use brute force and acquaints him to try using violence around him as it will be pointless because of his unique skill, complete zone of peace. Kim confirms it with the warrior who informs him that the demon is speaking the truth, adding that his skills neutralizes any act of violence within these walls. Well, it seems like our boy has found himself a feast as he is enticed by the demon's skill. After that, Greed explains that the prince and Saintess have both lost their souls to him, and to get them back, Kim needs to win against him. The demon clarifies that he must bet something of equal value if he wishes to have their souls back. He must bet his soul as well. Our guy seems to agree with his conditions but makes a shocking claim when he bets souls, his and the warrior's soul. Upon hearing this, the warrior freaks out and asks him what he's doing. Kim then lets out that since the demon took 2 souls, they will also have to bet 2 souls if they get 2 souls back. While the demon says he's right, our guy assures the warrior that he can definitely beat him, muttering that's what Eddie said before losing his soul. Kim lets out that he has a better chance at winning anyway. Panicked, the warrior seems to trust him with this. Betting 2 souls, Greed then asks the knight his game of choice, and Kim raises his hands. Assuming that he is playing rock, paper, and scissors in a flash, the guy strikes a punch straight into the demon's face, smashing him on the ground. It turns out that according to experiments Kim has done, skills don't work on him. In simple words, this monster is not affected by skills that directly target him. Just like he receives damage from a fireball, which creates a ball of fire and throws it at the target. The reason is that it's a skill that throws a fireball created with skill, and the same goes with the rapid shot and guided shot. Likewise, this demon's skill to complete a zone of peace ultimately doesn't work on him, because this skill only applies to people using violence within the zone. Coming to the present scene, Kim strongly stomps his feet onto the demon. It was the first time in his life that Bacchano Greed could not understand this sensation. When he finally realizes the sensation of physical pain, he also discovers the complete zone of peace was broken, and a sense of defeat was carved deep into his soul. Furthermore, Bacchano's other unique skill, absolute execution, gets revoked as the conditions of the agreement set beforehand were met. Just like that, the 2 souls return, and the Saintess and Edward appear to be in shock. Meanwhile, the demon utters that it's a scam. Kim, who has already beat the crap out of him, goes on to the second game. Betting on Greed's life and everything he has left, our ruthless guy asks him if he's going with his right hand or left hand. Grinning like a madman, Kim transforms his feet while Bacchano makes a guess. Giving the wrong answer, the guy kicks the hell out of him as the blood splatters everywhere. Witnessing one of the great kings getting annihilated, the demons are left in terror and run for their lives. However, the monster traps them and affirms that nobody is getting out of here alive. Listening to this, the warrior objects and makes him understand that they don't need to kill for no reason. Giving him a cold stare, Kim justifies that these scumbags were enjoying watching Bacchano taking people's souls, and taking these trash out is an act of righteousness. While the warrior tries to reason with him, the knight aims the sword at his neck and asks the warrior if he will choose justice or goodness. As he remains silent, Kim tells him to get those 2 people out of there, as someone who doesn't even know where their heart lies will only get in his way. The warrior then takes the Saintess and Edward out of the place while the demons inside scream for help, pleading to let them out. The heartless monster then begins cleaning the house and devours the demons as they scream in agony, gulping them down like the vicious beast he is. After his bet with the demon general, he acquired his skills, and the moment he acquired them, information flooded into his mind. After gaining control of the casino, Kim learns that it was Greed's personal fort, where he controlled everything. Now that he gets the control, our guy thinks of testing out some hypotheses, but he seems to be running out of time. Removing the fire extinguisher materials and supplying oxygen inside the building, the monster breathes fire, which results in exploding the whole place. Witnessing the blazing fire out of the building, the warrior is taken aback, but he recalls his conversations with Sir Kim and walks away. The next scene takes us to the demon's hideout, where the 2 remaining demon generals are shocked by the situation. In the meantime, a little demon arrives and asks about the matter, to which one of the demons informs her that they lost contact with the sloth, adding that Greed's domain in the Grand Vegas has fallen and he's nowhere to be found. After knowing that there is no chance of them being alive, the little demon starts sobbing as they lose 2 very talented demons. However, one of the deadly generals, Jealousy, addresses the girl as Majesty and says that the plan has been processed without the intervention of the 4 great kings, so she doesn't have to be sad. Asking if she shouldn't be sad about the deaths of her colleagues, the demon apologizes to her, saying that they volunteered to stop the warrior, adding that it's tragic, but mourning would be an insult to their sacrifices. Agreeing that the warrior was delayed and their plan is almost at its final stage, the Majesty concludes that it's a sacrifice for the greater good and leaves as she feels tired. After she leaves, Jealousy and Lust argue about their unsuitable titles. Nonetheless, Lust seems to care about Her Majesty's plan as they're almost at the last stage. He surmises there won't be any setbacks if they die. Upon hearing this, Jealousy questions who should die first and decides to volunteer first. Watching his colleague willingly die, Lust gets concerned, but Jealousy assures him that he's just an old man wanting to go first. The scene then takes us to the Pig's Grand Vegas, which appears to have been ruined by the explosion. We see the sole survivor, Kim. He narrates that setting the fire in the casino was a risk to himself because his super regeneration skill comes from a troll, which happens to be weak to fire. However, the guy was able to shield himself with the dragon scales and lizardman mucus. In addition, if the regenerative area is exposed to the fire, he will receive critical damage. Considering his fight against the demon dragon, he was too careless, and it would have been dangerous if the dragon breathed fire on his regenerating shoulder. Coming to the present, Kim hears the rustle within the ruins and witnesses a salamander. While he wonders if it's a pet that a demon raised, the lizard springs up and it turns out to be a 10-foot-tall giant reptile. As our guy speculates that this lizard was able to withstand the dragon fire, he gets fascinated by it and opens his mouth for another feast. He grabs it from the tail and bites the salamander with his sharp shark teeth, slicing it apart. Later, our boy joins the warrior and the others. Meanwhile, Prince Edward's head hurts, and he thinks being inside that chip was the worst. He catches Kim smirking and asks if something good has happened, calling him a creepy bastard in his head. But the guy skips the main plot and informs him that he escaped fire. It is then revealed that the strange lizard Kim ate, the salamander, is a rare lizard immune even to dragon fire. It secretes fireproof mucus on the surface of the skin and in cells throughout the body. With this, he can now use it on his troll skin, which he previously couldn't cover in mucus, concluding that he's overcome his weakness. While Kim reveals everything about his new skills, Edward shakes his head as he processes the new information and is kind of alerted by him. Conversing in English after a while, our boy assures him that he will go back to where he came from when he knows how, so he doesn't need to worry. Panicked, the prince seems threatened by his sworn brother, letting out that knowing in his head is one thing, but feeling in his heart is completely different. After that, Kim ponders that they are working together, but if Edward sees him as an object of terror, it might lead to unintended consequences. To clear the air, our guy tells him that he's vicious yet helpful, which might ease his panic. As Edward asks what he means, Kim discloses that he did the job for him while he was unconscious, informing that the warrior turned his back on justice and chose goodness. Hearing this, Eddie seems to hit the bullseye and marks his strike number 2. Grinning like a monster, the prince believes that he just has to satisfy one more condition, and he will be able to kill the warrior. It is then revealed that the warrior is the most powerful being on the Elmwood continent. Not only in physical strength, but the warrior is also protected from the grand scheme of life, known as destiny. As the Demon King's army approaches them attacking the warrior escapes a death blow, one that would have taken an ordinary human 1,000 times over, and in life-threatening situations someone comes to his rescue. If he were to face an unbeatable opponent, chance intervenes, granting the warrior victory. If the warrior is in a situation that requires 1 in a million chance, a miracle occurs without a fail. Therefore, in order to kill the warrior, it requires power far stronger to overthrow his destiny. But no one like that has ever existed. It led to the Demon King being slain by the human warrior and the human king by the demon warrior. His destiny only protects him if he's a warrior, otherwise it won't work. If the warrior goes against his qualifications, destiny will no longer protect him. Meanwhile, the warrior is glad he got lucky and found a carriage since they have a long way ahead of them. The prince mockingly jokes around, saying it's because of him they got blessed by the goddess herself. Edward goes on to explain to Kim about the qualifications of a warrior that are the most righteous, the most just, and the most virtuous. However, the warrior has already defied the virtuous part at the demon village and decided against the righteous at the casino. Now he only needs to give up on one qualification, and he will no longer be a warrior. Both Kim and Edward converse in Japanese so that no one understands them. While riding the cart, our guy seems curious as to why the prince is so determined to kill the warrior. That's when the prince confesses that this wasn't his original plan. He's just carrying out his old man's plan. The damned bastard, the king, planned on making his firstborn son his successor, and the second son, him, to be the advisor to the throne. So, the king devised a plan to make the warrior lose his title, which meant disqualifying him by forcing him to choose between being the warrior and succeeding to the throne. But he ended up not carrying out his plan since he feared the wrath of the goddess. Somehow, Edward came across his plans, although he admits that he did really struggle with unlocking the seal enchantments. So, after making some revisions of his own, he's currently carrying out those plans. Getting what he's trying to say, Kim lets out that this wasn't the answer to his question, wanting to know why the prince wants to kill the warrior. He doesn't seem to have any enmity towards him that would make him kill him. Upon this, the evil prince lets out that if his brother, the warrior, were to die, then the despair his old man would feel will outweigh any sadness of his own. At that moment, they reach the Flatfield Plains, which appear to be the place where the Demon King's castle is. But the prince finds it strange because in video games, the Demon King's castle is always surrounded by lava or in the middle of a poisonous swamp. He finds it odd to be in the middle of the plains, while our guy finds this area ridiculous and wonders who would build their capital here. This leads them to think that something is not right, and Kim notices how there's literally nothing around them, not even an insect. While the prince wonders what the hell happened here, our guy seems certain that they have something ahead of them. All of a sudden, the horse makes a loud noise and stops in his tracks, refusing to go further as it trembles with fear. The warrior comes out while the prince inspects why the horse is scared since there is nothing around here. Thinking that the horse might be exhausted, the warrior gets a weird feeling and wonders if it's because of the castle. Meanwhile, his little brother asks him what's wrong. The warrior shrugs that feeling off, claiming he did feel something strange but not sure what it is exactly. He utters they might be able to find out if they get closer to the castle, but with the horse like that, they can't do anything. Once the horse stopped, it refused to take another step. Firstly, the prince tried to calm the horse by feeding it grass, but it refused to eat. Secondly, the saintess even used a healing spell on the horse in case it was injured, but nothing was physically wrong with him. Our guy, on the other hand, contributed by scaring the horse, but it only began to tremble even more. Finally, the warrior gave a rousing speech about the significance of slaying the demon king, but the horse did not budge. Just like that, they decide to spend the night here since they can't really do anything. Just when Edward unties the horse in order for it to rest, the horse kicks him and runs away for his life. The warrior senses something and takes out his sword, alerting them that they are already surrounded, followed by a strange voice. The voice mumbles that it's terribly disappointing to see who the warrior keeps company with, indicating the prince calling him dense and lacking in vigilance. On top of that, his detective skills are miserable, worse than any creature, making the demon wonder how they made it this far alive. The warrior tells the demon to reveal himself while the demon speculates if there's a need for it and lifts his magic stick, banging it back on the ground with force. This causes the ground to rumble, making them think it's an earthquake. But everything gets clear like air when suddenly thousands of undead start popping out of the ground. And the demon general reveals his name, Richmond, one of the 4 great kings and the one who will stop them. It is then narrated that Richmond de Envirod, also known as Jealousy, served in the demon kingdom longer than anyone, 200 years to be specific. He has fought 2 warriors and served 3 demon kings up until now. For half of his 200 years, he held the title of chancellor directly under the king. It is an important role that overlooked operations in and out of the kingdom. Such a feat is even impossible for a demon with a lifespan twice as long as humans. However, it turns out he was undead, which doesn't mean like a zombie or a skeleton. He was not even an incomplete undead like a vampire who requires blood in order to live. He was a lich, the highest-ranked undead, and the one who could never die as long as the phylactery containing his soul and power remained intact. He became more powerful than ever after experiencing death once, and now his arrogance knew no limit. The generals and the demon king himself in the castle dare not to oppose him. Not until what happened that day when the previous generation's warriors invaded the demon king's castle, and Richmond tried to stop them by summoning an army of undead in the flat field. But they were all annihilated by the warrior's light magic, and he himself was slain by the warrior. When Richmond's body was restored from his phylactery, the warrior already left, slaying the demon king as well. After that incident, Richmond's pride reached rock bottom when other demons started gossiping about him, calling him selfish and arrogant. If someone else were in that situation, they would have silenced them with their powers and licked their wounded pride. However, Richmond was nothing like that. He was a genius sorcerer. He did not do anything so degrading as blaming others for his failure. Instead, as a researcher, he investigated the cause of his defeat. The primary cause of his defeat was the warrior's light attribute magic. It was impossible for his undead army not to be weakened by his light magic. For 4 years, Richmond tried to imbue his undead army and physical body with tolerance to light, and as a result, he became very strong. On the contrary, the saintess and the warrior are baffled as to why they weren't able to detect the undead, because the undead radiate resentment towards the living, and that can be detected. But they never detected anything. Meanwhile, the saintess couldn't even detect evil from them. Although she practices holy magic, the warriors instruct her to use holy magic. As she casts the holy magic, the undead remains unaffected by it but becomes even cleaner. Freaking out, they realize that her magic healed them instead. After that, the demon decides to reveal the fun part he has been keeping and strikes his magic stick on the ground, surprisingly, using holy magic. The sight of the undead using the holy magic makes the warrior go crazy, and the saintess is left in shock while Richmond reveals his secret as a little treat for them and pulls out a temple's holy scripture. Suspicious, the saintess recognizes it and asks him how he got that, to which the demon responds that it's obvious that he is a disciple of the temple. In fact, all these undead on the flat field, including him, are the disciples of the temple. Therefore, they don't harbor any hatred or resentment towards the living. Upon hearing this, the saintess finds it absurd for an undead to be a disciple of the temple. Meanwhile, the demon doesn't get offended and finds it funny instead. Mocking her that she started her journey as a saintess 10 years ago, Richmond reveals that he was a disciple of the temple long before she was born, and he's read the Holy Scriptures over and over again to build his tolerance to holy magic. Daring to call his devotion to the temple absurd, he lets out that he has also acted out the deeds of many saints and holy men. He tells her that 10 years of devotion for them is beginner level, and with that level of devotion she has right now, she would be around a lowly undead's level, pointing towards an ugly-looking undead. While the saintess is pissed for comparing her devotion to an undead, the demon further reveals that feelings like hatred and resentment comes from jealousy towards the living. But with faith, Richmond was able to overcome his jealousy that has been carved deep into his bones. With being able to conquer jealousy, Richmond calls himself the general of pure, unadulterated jealousy. Left in disbelief, the saintess justifies that the undead don't fit the criteria set by the temple to be considered natural forms of life, and there's no way creatures like them believe in the temple. Richmond responds that there's nothing in this world the goddess hasn't touched, and every little thing holds a seed of devotion. He further mentions that the undead bodies are created by the goddess and revived by the magic regulated by the goddess, so it's not impossible for them to have faith. Realizing that the demon just stated a verse from the scripture, the saintess is appalled and mutters even if demons have faith, the goddess couldn't bestow the power of holy light upon such foul creatures. But Richmond shocks her once again as he states another verse and says that so-called foul creatures like him have turned to the pure light, adding that it's not surprising for the goddess to bestow the power of holy light upon them. Intimidated by the knowledge of the demon, the saintess acknowledges that he's not wrong, speculating that this bastard is clearly a devoted disciple of the temple. Trying to trick him, she asks Richmond to get out of their way as they carry the divine message sent by the goddess herself. But the demon clarifies that she cannot deny the laws of the earth by using the laws of heaven as an excuse, stating the laws of the heavens are invalid as they've entered his territory, and even if the goddess claims his actions are wrong, he has vowed to serve the demon king. Saying that it's enough talk, Richmond closes the scripture and commands his undead demons to kill them as they have waited for long enough. As the demons dash towards them, the saintess casts a holy barrier, and to her surprise, the demons break through the barrier and attack her. Just as the undead zombie is about to devour the girl, someone casts light magic, smashing the demon away. It appears to be Prince Edward who saves her with a shield of lights and calls out Angela, the saintess, to snap out of it. While she looks at Eddie fighting the monsters, Angela starts blushing as she gets a flashback of Eddie protecting her from the wolves when they were kids. But she yanks out her thoughts and recalls that she must not have any personal feelings as a saintess. She then joins the prince, who seems glad that she's back. On the other hand, Kim seems to be resting on the carriage when a demon disturbs him, and he whacks him with his armor hand. Concerned, the warrior asks him if he's all right, and our fella jumps from the carriage. Relieved that he's still in one piece, the warrior then warns him that the light magic doesn't work on these undead monsters. Not giving a damn, Kim steps forward to fight off the zombies while the warrior is quite surprised by his bold move. The real monster enters the scene, and without wasting a moment, our boy rips out the demon's arm and kills it like it's no big deal. Kim reveals that the demons break when they hit them, and the warrior is dumbfounded. He seems fixated on the idea that the undead must be fought with light magic, and all he needs to do is swing his sword more. Asserting that they're nothing but the demon's king, henchmen, the warrior leaps toward them, thinking that his holy sword will be a force to be reckoned with. Surmising that as long as they are immune to light magic, the undead will get back again if he cuts them down, so the mighty fella plans to destroy them, adding that a regular sword would break, but his holy sword is indestructible. On the other hand, Angela seems to be taking down the monsters by striking powerful punches at them. Her 2 fists are more than enough for the humble priests to defend themselves, as the Pope of the Temple said 1,000 years ago. Meanwhile, Edward takes it as a shame that he can't use his specialty, light magic, but he seems to have another way to wield magic. Watching them beating the crap out of the undead zombies, Kim thinks that they're doing better than he thought, but as there seem to be way too many to deal with, he decides to join in to end this quickly, transforming into a dragon. As Richmond peeks at them struggling to fight the endless undead army, he makes it clear that even if they manage to wipe out 1,000 of them, that doesn't even amount to 1% of the entire army, threatening that they will soon be joining his undead army. But his pride is crushed in a flash when the dragon breathes fire at his army, which makes the old guy question his life decisions. While the blazes spread, the dragon carries the warrior companions and glides in the sky. As Angela and the warrior are freaked out by this sudden dragon transformation, Kim informs them that they will be heading straight for the Demon King's castle. Getting suspicious, the warrior glances at Edward, who doesn't look panicked at all, which leaves him to guess if he already knew about it all along. He then asks the prince if Sir Kim is a dragon, to which Edward refuses. They demand an explanation from him, and that's when the prince speaks up that he can't reveal Kim's real identity as he is bound by oath. Eddie mentions that Sir Kim's origins are unlike that of any other human. He is also dangerous enough to make the whole world his enemy and refuses to speak further. Meanwhile, the warrior ruminates that Kim can transform into a dragon and has a unique origin, concluding that it's a shapeshifter. Freaking out, the warrior asks the prince if he's a shapeshifter, but Eddie refuses to say anything. Troubled, the warrior ponders that a shapeshifter's metamorphosis is a unique skill of a type of demon, which means that Sir Kim must be a demon who turned on his own race, or a half-breed born from a demon and a human. In summary, the warrior is reminded of his past death by the monster and suspects that Kim might be the monster of destruction. However, he remembers how that guy helped them defeat the demon generals and rescued them from the undead just now. Recalling that he has already slayed the monster of destruction with his own 2 hands, the warrior stops doubting the very kind Mr. Kim and believes that he can never be the monster of destruction. Getting near the Demon King's castle, the warrior is astonished that they managed to cover the distance in 30 minutes and peeks at the castle, which looks quite ordinary. While the dragon tells them to look behind, they all witness the army of undead following them, and the Saintess assumes from the distance that they will catch up to them in 2 hours. Calculating the time, the warrior reckons if it would be possible to slay the Demon King and escape on Kim's back. He speculates that there's not enough time to execute this plan, and if they fail to kill the Demon King before the undead swarm, they repeat what happened earlier. Just then, the warrior asks the dragon for a favor, and Sir Kim lands on the ground while the 3 of them scamper toward the castle. The demon guarding the castle spots the human soldiers. He commands the other soldiers to stop the intruders as they are headed for the castle. As the demon soldiers try to catch up to them, at that moment, someone splatters a purple sticky liquid on the demons. In a flash, an explosion occurs near the gates and the dragon escapes away. It turns out that Kim had stored a flammable fuel in his body that explodes at the slightest spark. It appears that Kim makes an explosion so that the soldiers won't be able to open the gates, and the undead won't be able to go in until the fire's out. On the other side, Richmond witnesses the explosion and grits his teeth out of anger, cursing the dragon. Watching the dragon fly away, the demon conjectures that he could be the dragon of Stuckfit, the dragon who can breathe fire multiple times a day, and wonders if Sloth was killed by him. Raging with anger, the demon general gets threatened by the dragon's presence, and mentions the 3 weaknesses of the undead, like they are weak to the attribute of the light magic, get weakened in sunlight, and decay over time. It is revealed that Richmond firstly overcame their weakness with piety, second was irrelevant once the sun went down, and for third weakness, he removed the moisture from their bodies to prevent decay, but it made them dry as firewood, which puts the monsters at risk from the fire. Although he can reduce damage using fire resistance, that won't work against the dragon's fire breath. A few feet away from the castle, Jealousy surmises that they won't be of much help to the king if they try to enter, as they will only aid the dragon by becoming firewood. He leaves the king's protection to Lust and prepares to bring down that dragon. On the contrary, the warrior, Angela and Edward, fight off the demon soldiers as they make their way into the castle. Just as they are about to go inside, someone makes a destructive entry into the scene and blocks the warrior's way. It appears to the last demon general, Lust, who utters that this is as far as they can go. It is revealed to us that Julius de Lustord, also known as Lust, is a male demon powerfully built with rippling muscles and happens to be an incubus. We are then transported into his flashback from 10 years ago, in which Lust, an incubi, was a mid-tier mage-type demon who seduced humans to drain their energy. As their talents lie in magic, they have no need to develop any true physical strength. Incubi are pretty boys and men to begin with, so they avoid building excessive muscles. Likewise, Lust avoided bulking up, but somehow he ended up with his hulking muscular body and attacked with brute force rather than magic. It all started a decade ago. From his memories of parting and loss, Julius was too confident in his appearance. While the guy is reliving his past sob story, his flashback is interrupted by the warrior who leaps towards him. As the muscular guy is pissed off for getting in the middle of his flashback sequence, he throws a big boulder onto the warrior, but this fella slices that big rock into pieces with his holy sword. Wielding his sword, the warrior strikes the final blow, which makes the demon fall dramatically as he is banged hard on the ground. The demon contemplates his last moments about his abrupt ending for the most powerful of the 4 great kings. Taking his story into consideration, his end was unavoidable. He did not take civilians hostage like arrogance and gluttony did, nor did he have power like giant monsters like Wrath and Sloth did. With not even having an advantage in a fight like Greed either, Lust also lacked a powerful army like the one Jealousy had. Consequently, in this one-on-one fight, the warrior clearly had the upper hand. Coming to the present scene, Edward tells the warrior they must leave. Meanwhile, Lust lies there helplessly and ruminates that he is destined to be defeated by the warrior with his strength alone, and lets out his last breath as he apologizes to his demon king. Just like that, the warrior and the others finally reach the Demon King's castle. Wondering that there's a Demon King behind these doors, the warrior opens the door and witnesses a little girl. On the other hand, the dragon then drifts towards Richmond's undead army, plotting something horrendous. The demon general gets dubious of why the dragon isn't breathing fire on them and plans to send his troops to the castle right now. In the meantime, as the dragon's mouth is bulged with something, he descends towards the army with light speed. Panicked, the demon snaps out of it and witnesses the dragon leaping towards them. As Richmond decides to cast the fire resistance enchantment on his army, our guy drenches them in purple poison. Speculating that it's poison, Richmond laughs hysterically and mocks the dragon for thinking that the poison would work on the undead, calling him a fool. Relieved, the demon thinks he has nothing to worry about, and the dragon agrees with him. At that moment, our fella spits out fire, which makes the demon laugh again, saying that his little fire breath is adorable. But his happiness turns into a tragedy when a big explosion occurs, which leaves the demon flabbergasted as he couldn't process what had just happened now. While the fire is provoked by the slightest of poison, causing reoccurred explosions, the dragon reveals that this position is more of a flammable fuel, roughly around the power of 30 fire breaths. With that, the fire spreads with the speed of light and burns the last great king, Jealousy, to death. Finally, Richmond's holy relic, the phylactery, is destroyed and he is annihilated. In the end, we see Kim peacefully lying down on top of the cart, unbothered by the situation. Flames take over the flat-field plains, and the sounds of explosions can be heard as the undead army is burned to death along with their general. Kim in his dragon form wonders if this is the end of the undead army, inspecting if the general is dead or not. While our boy doesn't call this a proper fight as it was too easy for him, he prepares for his next move to eat the remaining soldiers. Thanks to his salamander skills, the guy can have his meal in the fire, but he ends up not eating since these are just corpses with no special skills. Therefore, he decides to eat the leftovers from the castle as he flies. Entering the castle, he witnesses dead demons all over the place, and then he sees one of the 7 deadly generals, Lust, who is killed by the warrior as he appreciates the warrior living up to his name. He opens the door to the Demon King's room only to find the prince and the warrior arguing about something, aiming their weapons at each other. Meanwhile, the warrior seems to be protecting a girl. Edward questions his brother's action as the warrior clarifies that humans and demons should coexist instead of killing. The Saintess tries to calm both of them down and tells them to lower their weapons. Meanwhile, Kim asks for an explanation regarding the situation as he questions what happened to the Demon King and who that woman is. The warrior ponders that telling him the truth will be dangerous, but his thoughts are interrupted when the prince reveals to him that the woman hiding behind the warrior is the Demon King, and that the warrior has abandoned his mission to kill the Demon King. The warrior requests Kim listen to his side of the story before he takes action and tells him that this girl is not the Demon King. He tries to reason with him, but Kim is confused when he hears the warrior say that this girl didn't used to be the Demon King. The warrior reveals that she's in the body of the Demon King, but her soul is from another world, which Kim finds absurd. Trying his best to make them believe, the warrior is adamant as he says the girl is not lying since his lie detection skills prove that she's speaking the truth. Upon hearing this, our guy now figures out that the Demon King must be the third person from the earth, Loki believing that the warrior tells the truth. Bringing together the lost pieces, the guy contemplates that Edward has died once and was reborn in this world in another human's body. He was a transmigration or reincarnation of Eddie Montoya, while Kim was transported to this world as himself, body and soul. In other words, Kim was transferred into this world, which leaves him to question who the Demon King is. It is then narrated that the Demon King's body was somehow inhabited by someone from Earth. The king was basically possessed by an Earth human who was an ordinary office worker. She wasn't interested in socializing with others, so she preferred hobbies like reading and collecting military relics. Therefore, when she became the Demon King, she didn't take her new situation seriously because the trope of being in someone else's body was commonly found in novels she used to read on Earth. Naturally, she assumed that her life as the Demon King was a dream, so she implemented her knowledge, skills, systems, and concepts from the Earth in this world. This is the reason why the Demon Kingdom prospered dramatically, and the balance between humans and demons shifted, being the reason for the goddess to send a warrior. However, she still refuses to believe that all this is real because as long as she is the Demon King, she knew she was going to encounter the warrior one day, like the protagonist in the novel. The only difference was that she wasn't the protagonist here. Her trusted generals were killed without accomplishing anything, and when her most trusted general, Julius, was killed by the warrior, she finally came to terms with reality and was reawakened by the long-forgotten fear. She confessed everything to the warrior, and now all she could do was beg for mercy. After that, Kim tries to comprehend what the warrior just told him and says that the girl ordered her henchmen to wreak havoc, and she's surrendering now just because she's scared. The warrior interrupts in the middle while our guy asks him if he actually believes in the other world nonsense. While the warrior justifies that it's hard to believe but it's the truth, our cunning fella, on the other hand, certainly believes him. But the boy gotta pretend. The poor warrior takes guarantee of the demon king speaking the truth, and his heart aches as he breaks down in tears when he remembers how many lives have been lost already. He wants to put an end to this endless slaughter. At that moment, Edward stares at Kim, giving him a signal, and he pulls out his sword and approaches the warrior, saying that it's time. While the warrior is falling apart, he is baffled to see a sudden change in his brother's attitude. Edward strikes the sword at him. To defend himself, the warrior tries to halt the attack with his sword. However, as soon as the prince's sword clashes with his sword, it shatters to pieces. The evil brother Edward stabs his older brother, and the demon king stands right behind him. Being a warrior, one must always be righteous, just, and good. These might look similar, but there are times when they clash. A warrior must overcome these moral dilemmas and come up with the most ideal outcome. And that's what he's been doing so far. But the ill will of Kim and Edward violated the warrior's good nature. Firstly, in the village where they were manufacturing weapons, the warrior took part in slaughtering innocent civilians. At the casino, the warrior did not punish the evildoers, but instead focused on saving his friends. Lastly, he abandoned his quest to protect that demon king. He basically tossed aside the last quality required to make the warrior worthy: righteousness, hence breaking all the sacred codes. This means that the warrior was no longer righteous, just, or good, therefore he was no longer a warrior. Blood drips from Eddie's sword as he stabs his brother, the warrior, and the demon king. He reminds him that he ceased to be a warrior the very moment he decided to spare the demon king's life. With him no longer being the warrior, the holy, unbreakable sword of the goddess is just like any ordinary sword. As the warrior tries to say his last words, he collapses on the ground without saying it. The sight horrifies the saintess as she asks the prince how he could kill a warrior and rushes towards his body in order to try to heal him. However, Kim grabs her hand as she keeps healing the warrior, and before she could do anything, she gets devoured by our guy. The scene then takes us to Edward's flashback, where he seems to be planning to kill the warrior, and they just have to break this one more condition. But before they proceed with their plan, they decide to take care of the priestess. While Kim finds this unexpected because he thought Eddie liked her, it occurs that the prince does like her, but he can't let a healer live as she might save the warrior's life. If the warrior is no longer a warrior, then he will become the first prince, and Edward would have to say goodbye to his throne, which also means he wouldn't be able to keep his side of the contract with Kim. As far as he knows, the saintess's healing powers are beyond what they can imagine. And there was an instance when a saintess from the previous generation healed what looked like minced meat. Might as well call her healing powers a miracle. The prince explains to him that she's basically immortal, so if they have to kill her, they would have to eradicate her body. Thinking how they would do that, the prince winks at him and reminds him that they have a monster that can transform into a dragon and swallow a whole person, referring to Kim. Grinning evilly, Kim says he seems to be mistaken, since he can also do that without transforming. Eddie admits that he's glad to be on his side since he gets kind of scared from his monster side, and is concerned about the saintess trying to escape even after Kim eats her. But our guy reassures him that won't happen since whatever he swallows doesn't go into his stomach, but disappears somewhere else. He isn't exactly sure where, but it would be impossible for her to claw her way out unless it's physically connected to his body. Coming back to the present scene, Edwards asks Kim if he would eat the Demon King's body because he would rather not leave his body lying around. But the guy refuses since the Demon King's skills are useless to him and suggests that it would be better to lay the body as proof just in case the goddess shows up. While Edward wonders how the goddess will grant their wish, suddenly the room starts to glow up, and Kim finds himself teleported somewhere else as he witnesses a cube that looks like some sort of system. Asking if it's the goddess, the system replies, saying yes. And our guy wonders if it's her true form since her statue doesn't look like this. That's when the system reveals that this interface is designed to take the ideal form for the subject based on their subconscious. However, the current subject is outside the bounds of the system's management. Therefore, he was unable to select an appropriate avatar. Asking what the goddess actually is, the system unveils that the word goddess stands for the Great Organizational Design and Developmental Ecosystem Supervisory System. It is in charge of the creation and maintenance of a world. Its key tasks include managing skills and status, creating monsters, and supervising the reincarnation of souls. Left in utter shock, Kim realizes that the goddess wasn't an actual being but a system, and thinks if this is what the real goddess is supposed to be. He then begins questioning the goddess, and first asks why he was brought to this world, to which the system answers that Earth is adjacent to this world, so sometimes errors in the system lead to people being brought over, like the prince and the demon king. Secondly, he asks why the monsters in this world were created to resemble legendary creatures or those from the Earth. The goddess responds that they were created, referencing the creatures and monsters from his adjacent world. The boy then asks the goddess if it has an issue with them killing the warrior, but shockingly, the system assures him that it's nothing like that. Kim is quite surprised and questions if he can be granted a wish as a reward for slaying the Demon King, adding that he and the prince ended up killing the warrior and Saintis in the process. While the system is aware of that, Kim wonders why it doesn't seem to be angry about losing his chosen one. The goddess then lets out that it doesn't possess feelings, similarly to a video game not having a preference in its functions for saving or loading. It adds that if the system had a personal say in this matter, he would have appreciated Kim's work. As our guy is still in disbelief, the system reveals that the implementation of the warrior system was supposed to create a balance between humans and demons, a system made for developing both societies through competition. However, the results were completely opposite. After implementing the warrior system, both human and demon societies remained stagnant, with no changes other than a few. Thanks to this incident, the goddess was able to discontinue the warrior system, and from now on, there will be no warriors for both races. Upon hearing this, Kim concludes that one race will be able to completely destroy the other, and there will be no competition. To which the system responds that the humankind does not only consist of one race, it is composed of multiple races like humans, elves, dwarves, hybrids, and lizardmen. Up until now, these races have been in alliances, but with the demons gone, they will start fighting one another. After that, Kim is finally satisfied after getting all the answers and decides to get on the main business, reminding the goddess about granting a wish to those who took part in the quest. The boy then asks the system if it could send him back to Earth. Our boy requests that the system send him back to Earth. However, the goddess refuses his request. The goddess mentions that it's not possible and it is forbidden to send a being that is already having a huge impact on this world. Wondering if he's impacting the world just by existing, Kim can't seem to wish to go back to Earth. Realizing that he can't return to Earth directly, he asks the system for a way back to the Earth on his own. Processing, the system tells him to wait as the information is currently being browsed by Edward Grand Canteen. Upon hearing this, our guy is relieved as Edward holds this important information, seeing as he will uphold his end of their contract. Finally figuring a way back to Earth that is taken care of, he proceeds to the next matter, which is becoming the most powerful creature in the world. Given that he has consumed a dragon, that's just another creature among the millions of others. He assumes that no matter how strong a dragon is, it can be slain by a more powerful monster or a large human army. Planning to find more monsters around the same power level as a dragon, Kim desires a creature that transcends all. The guy then asks the goddess about the creatures that can transcend their physical form, and at the same time others are unable to make contact with it. The system reveals that these creatures do exist and directs the information to Kim's brain. As he feels all the massive amount flowing into his brain, he gets to know about the creatures with Earth's mythology as their motif that are currently in their developmental stage, as their cultural and technological capabilities of Elmwood continent are unable to counter them. Being able to produce one of these creatures upon his wish, our boy gets to choose a creature and gets baffled whether he should choose the ability to travel at 400 light speed, ability to teleport, or ability to create physical forms. He gets tempted by all the extraordinary skills. However, Kim decides to save his wish. The boy then narrates that none of these creatures have not yet been released in this world, because the Elmwood cannot counter them, which means that people of Elmwood will be able to fight off these creatures one day. If he lets his guard down quickly by reaching to the top, he will become lazy and idle, which means that someday other creatures will catch up to him. But if he becomes an apex predator, that means no creature or no other being can catch up to him, believing that he will be indestructible and at the top. In addition, he has yet to devour countless other creatures, and after consuming all the creatures, he can gain this extraordinary skill later anyway. Kim then informs the system that he will receive his reward for killing the Demon King some other time, asking if it won't say no. The goddess assures him that reward payment is on temporary hold, and that the system will return to process it once he requests it later. After that, Kim asks him when he can return to his current state, to which the system responds that he can go whenever he wants to, and questions whether he is going to wait for his companion, as he is currently in the process of making a wish. But our guy decides to return before Edward. Later, the prince returns to his current state and is welcomed by his partner, Kim. Wiping his tears, Edward is surprised as he didn't know Goddess would take her form. Listening to this, Kim speculates that he's talking about Angela, the saintess, as the goddess is supposed to look like the subject's ideal form from their subconscious. While our boy asks him if he regrets getting her killed, the prince clenches his fist and lets out that he regrets every second of it. But he recovers from the moment of sorrow and asks Kim if he's curious to know what he wished for. As the prince tells him that he asked for the knowledge needed in the future, Our guy interrupts him and cunningly claims that Edward certainly possesses the knowledge on how to send him back to Earth. Unruffled, the prince agrees to him and lets out that he can't let a monster like him run rampant in the world he is about to rule, adding that he's become so powerful for him to kill. Kim, who seems too determined to go back to Earth, asks the prince about how he can go back. The prince responds that he has a feeling that the demon army is going to be at the Demon's King Gate at any moment, so he will tell all about it on their way. It is then revealed that the Demon King's plan, as told by the four great kings, was the Demon King's wholesale reform, the distribution of command, introduction of new weapons and war tactics, the education on the importance of supply, the reform of war rituals when a higher rank leader dies, the subordinate takes over the command. It comes to light that all her ideas came from reading books on military strategy. As a result, a large reform of the demon army was implemented, and its combat capability dramatically improved. They were capable of endangering the survival of the human race even without the Demon King or his generals. The scene takes us to the Demon King's castle, where the human soldiers seem to be shooting arrows at the demon army, which seems endless. While one of them is eliminated, the human soldier finds it impossible to fight off the large demon army with strange weapons he's seen before, thinking if it's really the end of the human race. Just then, someone attacks the demon army, and it appears that more reinforcements have arrived. Suddenly, the general soldier notices that someone has opened the castle's front gate and shouts at fellow soldiers to close them. While one of them informs him that it's the Knight of the Third Order, the soldier recalls that the order is famous for being composed of the sons of aristocrats who are utterly useless. At that moment, as the aristocratic knight gallop on their horses, one of them decides to take this opportunity to show everyone how brilliant he is. But unfortunately, he is killed by the demon's weapon. On the other hand, the general frantically orders the soldiers to close the gate as the colossal demon army awaits them. As the soldiers are about to close it, they are attacked by the demons. The general soldier presumes that they are done for and accepts the fate that humanity will end soon. That's when the soldiers witness something in the sky and are freaked out when they realize it's a giant dragon. It appears to be Edward, Grand Conton, and Mr. Kim who come to their rescue. The next scene takes us to the king's palace, where the soldier reveals that Prince Edward has returned from his quest to slay the Demon King and fought off the entire army. While the people are amazed by the prince's great work, the king is left in disbelief and presumes how the prince was able to destroy the entire demon army. That's when the soldier unveils that the prince arrived, riding a dragon, and it burned the whole army to death. Upon hearing such preposterous things, the king is utterly astounded and finds it hard to believe that Edward controls a dragon. But the soldier assures him that he's speaking the truth, and he confesses witnessing the whole thing with his own eyes, saying that it was incredible. After realizing that the truth cannot be denied and watching the people praising the prince, calling him a hero of humankind, the king contemplates that if he continues doubting the prince's accomplishment, people will question his insight. The king finally acknowledges his son's remarkable success in front of the people. He then ponders that the prince cannot be a hero of humankind, given that he's just like his father. The king believes it could be true that Edward delivered the final blow during the battle with the Demon King, as his talents and skills are real. However, the warriors and the saintess's deaths don't make sense to him, and the king assumes that the prince slain them, considering that he would have done the same. Thinking that it's only natural that Edward killed the warrior, the king speculates why the prince wasn't punished for carrying out his plan, as being a royal family is a reward for devotion and loyalty to the goddess. Therefore, by killing the warrior, Edward has committed a sin unworthy of forgiveness, but the prince leaves no trace of having received punishment from the heavens. The high praise for the prince's contribution is more than any chosen warrior from the temple, and those who supported the princess have now turned towards the prince. No matter how much the king tries to think about it, the more he finds it absurd. Nonetheless, the king eventually accepts the truth and his son's accomplishment. Thinking he may have been too harsh on the boy, he believes that the prince has changed. It is revealed that after the prince's dramatic return, he did not return to Santo Almaruez. Instead, he flew around the kingdom and took out the remnants of the demon army. This made the aristocrats, who were once hostile towards him, now praised him as a hero. A few days later, in Santo Almaruez, Prince Edward is wholeheartedly welcomed by the people. While everyone was busy preparing for the audience, Mr. Kim and Edward were the only ones who did not care about anything. In the meantime, the prince lets out that the king is wary of Kim and would have made an impression when he first met him. But our guy, who is not interested in earning glory and honor, asks the prince if he's sure about the seating plan, to which Edward mutters that he's certain, given that he got this information from the goddess herself. After that, Kim leaves, and the prince wishes him good luck. As the bell rings, Prince Edward is honorably escorted into the palace, meeting eyes with the king. The king seems to be panicking inside as he ponders whether he is right to believe that the prince changed after the quest. Just then, one of the soldiers asks for the prince's sword, and Edward reaches to his sword, giving it to the soldier. Collecting the sword, the soldier recalls the king's order to kill the prince immediately if he goes for his sword, while Prince Edward kneels before his father and asks him how he's doing. The king then asks him what he learned from his journey, and the prince responds that he's learned of the sacrifices the king has made for his people and realizes the weight of the crown he wears. While the king is speechless, the prince rises, and his father yells at him, saying that he did not order him to stand up. Smirking, the prince casts his light magic and retrieves his sword, confessing to his father that he's come to realize what he should do from his point onwards, adding that the king doesn't need to sacrifice or bear the weight of the crown anymore. As a strike of terror rushes through the king, he asks his son what he's doing, and the prince reveals that he's succeeding his throne as he pulls his sword. Freaked out, the king yells at the prince while the soldiers surround Edward with their weapons and stop him. Just then, Edward casts his light magic, creating a blade of light, armor of light, and shield of light. As the soldier tries to halt him, the prince ruthlessly stabs him and kills all of them, chopping off their necks. While the old man is scared to death and calls it treason, realizing that he was a fool, he thinks this bastard has changed. However, the king reckons that he already saw it coming and already stationed his elite assassins. As he presses the button to signal his assassins, no one seems to be responding, and the old man looks behind, ordering his people to call for reinforcements. Strangely, he notices that something is wrong with them as he witnesses them snickering, more like being possessed. Frightened to death, the king is left baffled. The scene then switches to Kim, who narrates about the creatures he's consumed in, which gluttony was the most bizarre. Glitterod was a parasite that didn't require a host to live, and was a mixture of multiple entities, making up a single consciousness. Surprisingly, he had the power to control every entity, even if he became separated from the rest. Kim struggled to control his parasitic powers. However, after consuming the whole city of demons in Stuckfit, they became much easier to control as he progressed with his skills. Furthermore, this guy can manipulate his host's emotions and erase their memories after infecting them. Once he told the prince about his newfound skill, he devised a plan to brainwash the king's men. While Kim agrees to do it, he stresses that the king might notice. Edward assures him that it won't be complicated, as he just has to stimulate their frontal lobes and amplify their ability to empathize with him, so that every time he accomplishes something, they'll derive satisfaction vicariously. Just then, our guy begins infecting the palace by contaminating the water supply with his eggs, the same method the demon used. Coming to the present scene, as the blood splatters everywhere, Edward strides forward with his sword, unveiling the old man's doing of how he killed his mother, sending assassins to kill him, and sending Angela to the temple. Confronting his father, he wishes to make him answer many things, but he decides to do it another time. At that moment, Prince Edward stabs the sword straight into his father's chest. While the blood drips out of the old man's body and mouth, he hopes that there's a special seat reserved for his son in hell. Taking his last breath, the prince pulls out the sword, and the king is eliminated as he falls from his throne. Meanwhile, the heartless son grabs the king's cape, and someone crashes inside the palace. It appears to be a guy who is killed by Kim. After that, our guy informs the prince that it's finished, and Edward succeeds with his plan to eliminate all the scum in the palace. Filled with pride, he puts on the crown and settles on the throne, uttering that there's nothing in his way anymore. The crowd then begins applauding for their new king, who sits on the throne covered with his father's blood. Later in the palace, King Edward seems to be conversing with his dead brother, knowing what he's come to say to him. It is then revealed that Edward's wish from the goddess was knowledge in its purest form. Using this, he was able to provide Sir Kim with the locations of the people he had to eliminate, and among the knowledge he was granted were the last words of his brother he could never finish. The warrior's word warns him not to cross the line. The prince gets up from the throne and tells the warrior that it's too late, and he should have told him before he joined his hands with that monster. He commands the warrior to be gone from his sight and snaps out of his imagination as he casts magic to destroy the warrior's illusion. Thinking about the future, Edward lets out that the world the warrior knew once is now gone. There are no more fools that will hang on to the facade that is humankind. Preparing for the dangers within, Edward has to pay the price since he made it here with the help of that monster. In order to send Kim back to Earth, the prince presumes that he will need the king of elves, the king of dwarves, the king of hybrids, and the king of lizardmen. Edward reveals that he will offer their heads at the shrine sealed inside the temple's dungeon, and with that will come an age of war and chaos. The next scene takes us to Kim, who seems to be writing about how the prince drove the evil king and took the throne, ruling the kingdom for a long time. While our guy calls it the end of part 1 of Fantasy World Food Travels and closes the book, Edward curiously asks him what he's been writing about. It turns out that our boy is deciding to write and publish a book when he returns to Earth and kills Eddie's former colleagues, and will live his life under a different name, adding that he won't be able to make money like he used to, so he will sell this book. Kim further discloses that since it's a story about him eating things in a fantasy world, he titles it Fantasy World Food Travels. But the king tells him that his book is not going to sell with a title like that and suggests a more intuitive title, calling it The More I Eat, The More I Get Stronger. Not caring about the title, Kim lets out that he's going to hire a ghostwriter anyway, as he is good at eating but not at writing. Meanwhile, Edward asks him what he's going to do if the book fails. Our fella puts on a smirk and informs him that he's experienced everything firsthand, and the story's details will be off-chart. Being certain, Kim predicts that his book is going to be a bestseller, given that it will be a series of 3 epic blockbuster fantasy films. However, the king shakes his head as he appears to be worried and discusses how they're going to send him back to Earth. Before Eddie could begin, Kim already knows that they need to make an offering of the king's head from each race and asks him if it's possible. Edward then pulls papers out of his drawers and clarifies that it won't be like going after the Demon King. He proceeds to explain that it will be possible to go after each king with an elite squad, but their heirs will claim the throne and come after humans to punish their arrogance, adding that they'll invade by allying with each other. The respective races are: the elves are skilled with the bow and wield magic, the dwarves' blacksmith skills have reached a level of magical greatness, and the hybrids and the lizardman's physical abilities have surpassed the humans. Mentioning their special skills, Edward asserts that they are no match for them, even if they have an advantage in numbers, and if they form an alliance, it would be the king's neck on the chopping block. However, for now, the king decides to establish stability and centralize his power, uniting all the nations to make it possible for them to fight other species. While the king hands Kim a list of papers, the guy goes through them and asks him if he's ordering him to do his dirty work. That's when Eddie reveals that it's a proposal and tells him to turn to the back. Flipping the papers backward, Kim appears to be exhilarated and lights up when he realizes that it's a treasure map as he goes through all the locations of different exotic species, more like his feasts. Glad that his brother likes the gift, the king, being the rightful heir to the throne, then appoints him as the top secret royal investigator. As Kim is shocked and asks if the kingdom had a position like this, Edward lets out that he made it just like he came up with a secret guardian knight and assures Kim that now he can be an investigator who travels freely, unlike a knight, and still hold a position of power. Accepting the badge, our guy reckons that it's a pretty good deal as he gets the freedom to act outside the kingdom, along with a treasure map, and in return, eliminate the king's enemies. As Kim is about to leave for his mission, Eddie informs him that he will be holding his coronation around this time next year, so he must come back before then, adding that he doesn't want people to start rumors that the 2 heroes who took down the Demon King are on bad terms. After that, our guy leaves the room and ruminates about where he should start and plans to use the information efficiently. Nonetheless, Kim seems to be sure about one thing. Once he completes his journey, he will be much stronger than before. In the meantime, one of the guards asks the prince if he's okay with Kim gone, as he was the most powerful warrior, and without him at his side, it may pose a security threat. But Edward mutters that it's nonsense, and this is why he is keeping him around, to make sure things like that don't happen. The guy hiding above the prince's room for his safety is the head assassin. He is the head of the Royal Assassins, an elite squad under the direct control of the king. The mystery is how Prince Edward had the Royal Assassins under his control when he killed the former king. Well, it is revealed that the former King Edward IV was planning to hand over Royal Assassins to Edward. While the eldest prince ascends to the throne, the second prince acts as a chancellor and the head of the Royal Assassins, eliminating enemies from the darkness. That was the king's plan. However, due to the eldest's overly upright upbringing, he became the warrior. The king's plan failed, and the plan proceeded partway. Somehow, the royal assassins were brainwashed to serve not only the ruling king but also Prince Edward. However, the condition was met when the prince inherited a possession kept by the king. Initially, the king planned to inherit the signet ring of the head of royal assassins, but Edward seized the crown instead. Just like that, the prince inherited the king's possessions, and the royal assassins were now to serve a new master. Fortunately, Edward completely took over one of the forces that could enter the kingdom, other armed forces, and the royal guards, all thanks to the brainwashing parasites. Coming back to the present, the prince contemplates about the monster. Kim, being gone from the kingdom, will make the parasite's effectiveness fade as well. He thinks of turning everyone in the kingdom to his side before that happens, and just like they say, what binds humans are profit, pleasure, and guild. The prince smirks as he seems to plot an evil plan. The scene then switches to Kim, who ponders whether the full-plate armor he received from the prince would draw too much attention. In addition, this armor has become Sir Kim's signature look and does not befit an investigator who works in the shadows. It comes about that our guy orders a new set of armor and looks impressed by his new look. Leaving the political realm, the guy leaves the palace as it's time for adventure. The next scene takes us to Kim, who narrates that now he's known as the prince's loyal servant and the slayer of the Demon King. But on Earth, he was nothing but a notorious criminal, an internationally wanted criminal. As the guy was constantly on the run from the police and secret organizations, he didn't have many hobbies to call his own. With no interest in sports or video games, interacting with others might have led to someone discovering his secrets, but he couldn't possibly let go of them, and that led to losing his second and third identities. It turns out that our monster's ideal hobby was reading. He was most interested in fiction stories that start and end with just one book. At first, he had no choice but to accept reading as his hobby, but later on, he fell in love with it. Well, it's more of a surprise that a vicious monster loves reading fiction stories. Unfortunately, this world is behind in culture and civilization, and only the aristocrats can own books. Luckily, our boy can acquire them through the prince, regardless of the trash quality. However, there's still hope. Even if entertaining stories aren't written by anyone, there are entertaining stories told by someone else. Later, a woman tells how humans used to pass their knowledge through story and song before they discovered how to write, and persuades the crowd to preserve these invaluable stories taught by wise town elders to the children and join the school of bards. Inspired by such words, a girl named Felina Greensmith becomes an aspiring bard, but later on, she regrets her decision. In a strange turn of events, she becomes a wandering minstrel, calling herself an idiot for believing that fraud, bard school. While Felina is not happy that her life turned out this way, she presumes that people only want to hear glamorous tales of adventure, rather than minor tales of the adventure of humble heroes. She concludes that, in the end, minstrels are nothing but clowns who entertain crowds with exaggerated stories, adding that this isn't why she wanted to become a minstrel. Regretting her life decisions, Felina enters a bar located in Santo Fabro. Hearing a lot of chattering, she glances at the small group of mercenaries and an adventurer who is none other than our guy Kim. She then witnesses someone with a cloak on his face and assumes that he's just some drunkard. But she notices the well-made armor and thinks that he might be someone involved in trouble, so it's better not to get involved. After that, she decides to sing for the adventurer and the mercenaries. Pondering that these two have the tendency to look down on one another, Felina carefully chooses a song as one wrong song choice can lead to fight, and she will have to wave goodbye to her tips. And it appears that the girl has an ace up her sleeve as she announces that she will be singing the song, "The Prince That Slayed the Demon Dragon and the Knight That Took on a Dragon." As soon as she announces this, the mercenaries divert their attention towards her, saying that the Missy knows a thing about heroic tales. While she sings, Felina ruminates that she knew that this song is guaranteed to be a moneymaker and peeks at the people who still seem to be enjoying her song. Soon enough, the poor girl starts getting sick of singing the same song repeatedly. But the song's highlight seems to be coming up as her earnings depend on this, and she sings about how the prince witnessed the death of his brother warrior. What he felt was sorrow, not despair. Suddenly, in the middle of the song, a mercenary grabs a guy sitting in the bar and calls him a smug bastard. As Felina is startled by the sudden chaos, the mercenary seems to have a death wish as the guy turns out to be the adventurer Kim. Meanwhile, our boy smirks. Muscular mercenary asks him if he finds the prince's tale funny and calls him a filthy traitor to the kingdom. The fellow mercenaries start joking about the adventures, saying that it serves him right for snickering like a creep. Interrupting her flow, Felina wonders if the fight is between 4 mercenaries and 1 adventurer, surmising that the mercenaries will win. She thinks about singing about heroic mercenary feats for her next song to uplift their spirits and open their wallets. Suddenly she hears something, and our guy twists the mercenary's arm and forcefully smacks him into the ground. While the fellow mercenaries rush towards that bastard, Kim ruthlessly fights them off. In the meantime, Felina freaks out and, scared for her life, immediately rushes out of the bar and runs for her life. She thinks it was bonkers and this is going to be big trouble, hightailing before she gets dragged into that debacle. But in this turn of events, Felina's actions were wiser than anyone else's in Santo Fabro. The scene then switches back to the bar, where Kim recalls the song about the warrior's strength empowering the prince and can't stop laughing as he finds it funny to think that the asshole was in deep sorrow, referring to Edward. While our guy was enjoying this rare moment of happiness, those mercenaries ruined it. As he chokes one of the guys who seems to be begging for mercy, at that moment, someone enters the scene and asks Kim to stop using violence in such gruesome ways. Stepping forward, she takes off her cloak and asks Kim to stop tormenting the weak. The armored girl then introduces herself as Paladin Purecreed, clarifying that she will not allow it, and appears drunk. It seems to be a paladin who walks over to Kim as he looks at the insignia of the city of the goddess on her clothes, which is covered with dirt and grime. Recalling that the prince told him a few things about this place, he remembers that the paladins are known to be one of the city's asymmetric powers. It is then revealed that it's the city of goddess, and it looks as if it had been modeled after the Earth's Vatican City, where this small city exhibits a large number of superhuman beings. One of its major asymmetric powers is none other than the Saintess who accompanied Kim on his last journey. The boy narrates that her skeleton was infused with magical steel blessed by the temple. She had extremely compact muscles, and her eyesight and reflexes were beyond those of ordinary humans, which means she was definitely a certified human weapon. However, in order to create a Saintess, it requires a tremendous amount of time and resources, and even with donations and offerings from all over the world, they could only create one Saintess a decade. It was a cost appropriate for a man-made weapon, one equivalent to the warrior. This is the reason why paladins were created. It is an effective way to create superhumans devised by the city of the goddess. A paladin is a modified human molded with magic and blessings, just like a saintess. The resources required to create a single paladin are 1 out of 200 those of a saintess, and they need only 2 out of 5 the time a saintess does for deployment in battles. After establishing a system, the city can mass-produce around 12 paladins in one go, but their performance is lacking compared to that of a saintess. It's as if a saintess is a modern tank model, whereas the paladins were a bunch of old mass-produced ones. Even if that were the case, humans would still win in a fight against tanks. It doesn't matter if it's old or new. As the paladin walks towards Kim, who is choking a guy, he ponders that she looks ridiculously weak compared to a warrior or a saintess, and he can kill her easily. But he stops his intrusive thoughts as he doesn't really want to get on the bad side of the city of the goddess so soon. He releases the guy as he runs away and asks her if she's happy now. Flustered, the paladin says that she didn't expect it to go that smoothly since those who torment the weak aren't eager enough to listen to her. But our boy clarifies that she had gotten the wrong idea regarding the situation, as he was merely just responding to a threat since those guys came after him. Being shocked as ever, the paladin is utterly mortified as she turns red, and Kim lets out that what she did was pretty cheap for a clown act, one he wouldn't pay. While he is brushing off his clothes, the paladin walks away, embarrassed, ordering another beer to avoid the awkward situation. After that, Kim heads out of the bar for his meeting since this was enough downtime for him. It is revealed that the county of Fabro was one of the territories that didn't suffer greatly from the Demon King's invasion, because it had zero strategic value. The Demon King formulated a strategy at the time, focusing on attacking key territories and immobilizing his enemies. The county of Fabro lacked technical skills, and production was sparsely populated, so the Demon King didn't see it as a threat. However, this changed after the war. Refugees from the neighboring territories flocked to the county, adding to the workforce. Mercenaries who survived also escaped to the untouched land to rest. With skyrocketing demand, the economy flourished with new restaurants and lodgings, and this city entered the first period of prosperity. But not every change is positive, as the county adopted this peculiar class system due to the sudden rise in the amount of outsiders. The lowest rank were the refugees who fled with nothing but clothes on their backs, and the middle class was composed of original refugees of Fabro. The top was occupied by the mercenaries, who are the biggest problem right now. They roam on the streets of Fabro as the ruling class because they know they are the reason for the economic growth. They solved every problem with force or money, and there weren't any authorities who should have stopped them. The county of Fabro only cared about itself and filling its stomach. It couldn't be more bothered about public order and society. Concluding that it's the current state of Santo Fabro, the prince's royal assassin explains everything to Kim and asks him when he will take action. Our guy informs us that he can do it now, but he is ordered to do it after 30 minutes. As he decides to signal him when it's time, Kim steps on the street and stops after hearing a conversation. A mercenary holding a guy shouts while asking who's the bastard that challenged the Crimson Gale mercenaries. The guy turns out to be the one Kim released earlier in the bar. As he inspects the situation and decides to move up his plan, the mercenary who seems to be screaming reckons that he hates dealing with nuisances like these. But if he doesn't deal with the situation, his men will look down on him. He speculates that only one man managed to survive in a 4-to-1 fight, which means that whoever it is dangerously strong. The mercenary seems to be scared and ponders that the bastard won't show up if they scare him with their numbers. He decides to boost his men's morale by declaring him a coward and finishing it with drinks. Taking a deep breath, he starts yelling with his swaggering bravado, but he is interrupted when a drunk guy shows up and tells him to shut his mouth. The drunk guy mutters that it's Santo Fabro, their city, and this isn't a place for an outsider like him to be striding around. While the drunkard scares the life out of him for a second, the mercenary comes up with a plan to finish off this drama with his fool and back away. He orders his men to teach him a lesson. Obeying the orders of their boss, they decide to make sure that the drunk bastard won't use his big mouth ever again. Unexpectedly, an arrow is shot straight at the guy's chest as he collapses, and the mercenary freaks out, yelling that he never ordered them to kill him. Abruptly, they hear the residents talking against the mercenaries that killed a man, and they can't let thugs like them roam around in their streets anymore. The voices keep reverberating as they demand to return their city from these mercenaries. Baffled, the mercenary realizes that they just got doomed while the drunk guy shot by the arrow smirks like a monster as he turns out to be Kim. We are taken to Kim's flashback, where it is revealed that Prince Edward, the rightful heir of the great kingdom of Cantine, has assessed Count Fabreau. The prince curses Count Fabreau, calling him a hopeless son of a bitch, and elucidates how Fabreau used to be one of the most renowned counties up until his grandfather's reign. But only after 2 generations the place has turned into shit. Thinking that one is supposed to be mature after losing parents at a young age, the Count Bastard has turned 50 this year, but still has no capability with the mindset of a 12-year-old. The prince then calls him an ass and decides that he will be the first to get killed. Kim then recalls that Edward was drunk while telling all this. Therefore, he thought that he was exaggerating, but seeing the county with his own 2 eyes proved the prince right. Snapping out of his flashback, our guy rustles through the bushes and thinks that only the center of the county, Santo Fabreau, has developed rapidly. The outskirts were basically nothing but slums. There is no army to protect the residents, so it is basically a hunting ground for wild animals and creatures. For this reason, it's a perfect place for a monster like Kim, as during the day, he hunts monsters by the rivers, forests, and mountains. At night, he exchanges monster remains at the Adventurers Guild, and with that money, he listens to the music of minstrels at the bar. Living like that for 2 weeks, our guy ruminates about how they were truly peaceful and idyllic days of slaughter for him. Some might say that he's wasting his time, but when he only had a year left until he returned to the palace, this was necessary. After that, he heads for his main mission and leaves the Great Forest, attaining infinite abilities. From time to time, the guy is still thankful for the 2 creatures who provided him with excellent samples, the parasite and the dinosaur beast. It was all thanks to them that he was able to utilize his abilities to the max. Unlikely, when he ate the dragon and the troll, he was completely unaware of what he could do or couldn't, since he had obtained many abilities in a short period of time. So, to analyze the provided samples, he tested his abilities in the wild for 2 weeks to see what he can do with his skills. Earlier, after leaving the bar, Kim heads to the promised meeting spot where he meets with the prince's agent, the royal assassin who reports to him the prince's plan. After processing the information, Kim realizes that the prince plans to completely replace the lords. He ponders that when there's chaos after the lords change, monsters will become more powerful, which is good news for him. The assassin asks him when he's going to take action, and he finds this wide riot city a piece of cake to assassinate. That's how the assassin shoots the arrow aiming at the drunk man, who is actually Kim himself. Just as evil as he is, Kim seems to know that cooperation from the majority is needed to stir things up. And with a large number of people with him, he just needs to change his vocals. Lying like a dead man, the guy first changes his voice to that of the saintess to imitate a young woman and screams at the top of his lungs, uttering that the mercenaries killed a man and they will take over the Santo Fabreau. Secondly, he changes his voice to that of a middle-aged man who saw something he shouldn't have back on Earth and says they can't let thugs like these roam around anymore. Thirdly, he changes his voice of the young LAPD investigator who chased him down like a dog. And lastly, he uses the voice of the dragon to alert the citizens of Fabreau by warning them to rise up and take back Santo Fabreau from the mercenaries. Our guy praises himself for orchestrating this so well. But this doesn't end here, as they amplified the people's fighting instincts by contaminating the water supply. After that, the city falls into chaos when the citizens attack the poor mercenaries, while Kim enjoys the show from a bird's-eye view, admiring his masterpiece. Later, at the palace, Prince Edward reads aloud about the rampage in Santo Fabreau, which started in the city to drive out the mercenaries but ended up fueling the anger of citizens. The citizens began to reject any outsiders and kicked out the mercenaries and refugees. This led citizens, refugees, and mercenaries to go berserk and violent, and Lord Count Fabreau lost his life getting caught up in the riot. While the prince is low-key over the moon and appreciates Kim for ending his work perfectly, the sly Edward crumbles the paper in front of the audience and says, how could a tragedy like this happen in his kingdom? He orders to amend an additional clause to the territory management law, announcing even if one claims to be rightful heir of a lord, they will be stripped of their territory if the Pope of the Temple and the king sees them unfit. He then announces that the number of mercenaries staying in the territory for more than a month must be less than half of the soldiers stationed there. With that, he smirks as everything is going according to his plan. On the other hand, Kim enjoys the sight of the city burning as he thinks the more dead, the less there are to remember him, just like on Earth. At that moment, the assassin appears behind him, and our boy asks him if he's done with his work. Getting done with his mission, the assassin still needs to figure out Kim's next destination, but our guy seems to know already as he informs the agent that it's Cavaloves, the territory with recent griffin sightings. It is then narrated that a griffin is a creature that's a combination of a lion and an eagle, which he found information about on the treasure map, adding that creatures like that are his favorite. After that, the assassin leaves, wishing Sir Kim safe travels, and our guy decides to go on his way. Suddenly, he gets startled when he witnesses the assassin still standing there, but it emerges to be the paladin girl. It is revealed to us that griffins are high-level monsters with the head and front legs of an eagle and the hind legs of a lion. Looking at these beasts, he finds the world magnificent yet imperfect. Regardless of their level, these creatures have the most inefficient body structure, as their upper and lower bodies are completely mismatched, which makes their movements weird on the ground and in the sky. Despite this, people still fear and rank them highly, calling them princes of the skies. Because despite all of their weakness, their strength is undisputed. Due to their lion-like behavior, they live in groups of around 10. In addition, their favorite prey are horses, which explains why attacks on humans are frequent in the area. Our boy then explains to the paladin that Kavaloves is the Rocky Mountains of Griffins, from where many men and horses take their path. For this reason, the Adventurers Guild of Kavaloves requested that they have either exterminate the griffins or wipe them out completely. Exhilarated, the girl agrees to his master while Kim further notifies her that attacks are frequent here, which means they might not reach their goal to eliminate every one last of them, adding that they have to hunt down the head griffin and the curb. While the guy keeps on talking, the paladin blabbers some kind of quote, and the poor guy wonders what the hell she is on about, nodding to her. Walking, Kim gets confused and contemplates how this so-called paladin of the city of the goddess is following him and calling him master. Well, it seems like a long story. The scene flips back to a few days earlier, the night of the rampage in Santo Fabro, where we see the prince's royal assassin murdering Lord Count Fabro and furtively sneaking out of his castle. As the assassin is escaping, the paladin discovers him and decides to follow the guy, thinking that it's suspicious how he is sneaking out of the lord's castle. Following the guy, she finds him meeting with someone and witnesses Kim, recalling that it was the guy from the bar last night. While she seems to overhear the assassin addressing the guy as Sir Kim, the paladin is freaked out and dashes towards him. The girl calls him out, and Sir Kim turns back to find the paladin he met earlier. Thinking that he should immediately get rid of her and destroy all the evidence, the boy stops when the girl excitedly flatters him as she guesses that it's the same Sir Kim who went on the journey with the warrior party, the Night of All Nights, and the living legend. Meanwhile, the paladin is obsessed with our guy as she gazes at him with sparkly eyes, and Kim reckons that it'd be best if he moves on quietly. Taking out his royal badge, the knight, being the nicest man ever, tells her that he's Sir Kim and that he's currently on a mission, requesting that she keep it a secret that he was here. The paladin agrees to him, but not so easily when she promises not to spill anything to a single soul, only if he takes her in as his disciple. Putting him in a spot, Kim remembers that paladins are the city's asymmetric power, and they are tracked by magic at all times to reduce the waste of military strength. To make matters worse, when they are slain, the tracking spell transfers to the attacker, as told by the assassin. This means that if he eliminates a witness, it will turn him into a man wanted by the city of the goddess. Therefore, the guy tries to make her leave by giving her grueling tasks like digging the cave with her bare hands without making a sound. In the meantime, the paladin effortlessly completes her task while Kim is pissed at how stubborn she is, letting out a sigh. Later, as they settle in the cave dug by the paladin, our boy tells her about the griffin's nature to bring back food to their nest, and for that reason, they will have to fight them on the Rocky Mountains. As the girl admires her master and thinks he's too wise, Kim lets out that they will have the upper hand while waiting in an ambush instead of chasing after them. Likewise, our guy ruminates how he underestimated the paladin's physical power, given that she dug a cave of this size with her bare hands. At that moment, the girl spots the griffin gliding to its nest carrying horse meat and guarded by many others griffins. When she asks the master what they should do, the guy instructs her to go first. She assumes that he's testing her skills and gladly accepts his command. Looking nervous, the paladin jumps off the cave with her sword to fight off the griffin. However, the beast grabs her face with its face while she warns the ugly bastard to let go of her. While Kim witnesses her and shakes his head in disappointment, the paladin finally comes back to the cave and happily informs her master that she's completed the test as the blood drips from her sword. Looking so done with her, our guy goes on about how her skills were a real crap show. Speaking from his judgments, he further interprets his remarks about her skills and lets out that she kept on losing her grip on the sword, thinking it would break, which made her swings weak. Moreover, she habitually checked the state of her sword after her attacks, resulting in slowing her judgments. And since all of her attention is on the sword, her magic is slow and inaccurate. Hearing such things about her skills, the paladin starts sobbing as she is reminded that these are all the same critiques she got from her sergeant back in the city. Now, she is getting a reality check again from the master she admired, and it's devastating for her. Kim then suggests the girl to throw away the sword and affirms that it will serve her better. As soon as she hears this, with a crestfallen face, the paladin thinks to herself if she's really that useless, unfit to be a knight. That's when the boy makes himself loud and clear and commands her to throw away the sword. The paladin obeys his command and gets worried, pondering whether, by throwing her sword, he is suggesting that she use her bare fists instead of a sword. After that, Kim rises and alerts her about another pack of griffins on the opposite ridge, commanding her to follow him to demonstrate his fight skills. Just like that, this fella effortlessly grabs the griffin with his bare hands, making the paladin's jaw drop. While Kim kills the griffin with his bare hands without any weapon, the paladin girl remains shocked, wondering what kind of fighting style this is. The boy presumes nothing special about a paladin's fighting skills. This girl uses a sword as her main weapon, but her swordsmanship isn't like that of a warrior. She uses light magic along with her sword, but she doesn't have the firepower and technique of the prince. Her physical capability is exceptional due to her body's modifications. Yet again, it's lacking compared to that of the saintess. In general, the paladin possesses the characteristics of the warrior party, but she did not make any of these characteristics her strength. Like the griffin, which has the characteristics of both an eagle and a lion, when combined, they are entirely useless. Although this girl could be unstoppable against an army of humans, she might have died a long time before reaching the castle if she were on a quest with the warrior. But that is the reason why she's teaching Worthy, a student Kim took in unknowingly. However, seeing her fight earlier changed his mind, and now he's actually interested in teaching her. Because the paladin Lion Hand's pure creed is the same type of monster as him. Meanwhile, Kim witnesses over 10 griffins flying towards him and decides to fight them all at once since it will be easier to provoke them. He rummages through his coat and finds a small pouch which is supposed to be a magic pouch, created by a high-level spatial sorcerer from the kingdom of Grand Contine. It looks small from the outside, but it has tremendous capacity on the inside. Its owner can store and remove their belongings at will. He pulls out a piece of horse meat that he swiped from the griffin the girl slayed, knowing that griffins love horse meat. Luring the horse meat in front of them, the griffins begin to slobber at the tantalizing meat, and they lean towards them. The boy narrates that there's a Chinese martial art known as Xiangxing Quan that imitates the forms and movements of animals. Kim had the chance to learn it once when he was in China. He thought this might make him even stronger since he shifts into different animals, but he quit not long after. Even if he could imitate other animals, martial arts require him to use his human form. As someone who actually uses animal body parts, this did not help him. He found it the most useless time of his life because it was developed for the efficient use of limited power. As someone with unlimited power, it's nothing but a shackle to him. His fighting style requires no such techniques as he simply destroys his enemies with sheer power. As the griffin approaches him, he holds it by its beak, which pieces through his troll's hand. But it doesn't affect him at all as he regenerates it in the blink of an eye, uttering that the griffin should be honored to be the first large creature for his experiments. He then forcefully smacks the griffin as it crashes down while splattering blood everywhere. It occurs that the demons he ate in Stuckfit not only consisted of fish people but also synthetic creatures that were arthropods. For that reason, the front claw of the mantis shrimp is now compatible with his body. An arthropod can punch with a force 2,500 times more than its body weight, having the power to kill the giant of monsters. Smiling creepily, he then wonders what he should experiment with next. Thinking about a horned lizard's ability to shoot blood with its eyes, he combines it with blowfish. The girl witnesses the fight that is totally brutal with no technique or flair required, just pure violence, which is completely different from a paladin's way of fighting. Seeing Kim fight so ruthlessly makes her heart race, and she feels like all those years of training in the city of Demeter were pointless. She realizes that Kim has the strength to tear metal apart with his bare hand, so he doesn't need to follow the fundamental principles of martial arts. He doesn't have to dodge when he has super regenerative abilities, and if the enemy has a strong defense, then he can just crush its body with its useless defensive skills. This makes her wonder if she could fight like him, throw away the sword that seems to be weakening her, and follow her instincts to use her full potential from within. But then she snaps out of it and reminds herself that she's a paladin, a faithful servant of the goddess and the representative of her holy city. As a knight and a paladin, this guy cannot allow his impulse to get the better of her. In the meantime, Kim walks to her after finishing his task and asks her if she enjoyed the show. The girl flinches as he asks her thoughts about this. Reluctantly, she doesn't reply right away, and our guy notices that she's holding back, telling her that she doesn't have to answer him right away. Calling him master, she guesses that he's talking about the quote of himself. 3 days later, after wiping out all the griffins in the location mentioned on the map, they both decide to climb down, and we notice the girl's heartbeat rising with veins popping out of her hands. It seems to be the adventure guild of Santo Cavalovas, where we see a rank C adventurer, Jack, written on his identification card, who turns out to be Kim. The guild employee clarifies to him that she knows what he's about to say, but they cannot withdraw their request no matter how many times he complains, and they've received orders for him to give up the credits for exterminating the griffins to another party. The next scene takes us to Kim, who is disguised as Jack, a 27-year-old rank C adventurer and a member of the Santo Cavaloves Guild, so that he can travel freely. At the guild counter, our guy confirms what he just heard about letting someone else take the credit for exterminating the griffins and wonders how this is possible. The woman tells him it's an order, which makes Kim curious, so he asks her about the guy who ordered her. But the woman refuses to tell him anything further and makes it clear that she's not allowed to tell him that. He then concludes that there's some bastard here at Santo Cavaloves' Adventurers Guild who steals the hard work of adventurers, adding that the guild employee is an accomplice. Threatening the guild employee, the boy lets out that it would be amusing if this news about the guild spread into other regions, clearing that he won't be the one to spread it, but his tongue kinda loosens up after drinking a bit. Listening to this, the employee gets pissed and glares at him, putting him into place. The woman wonders how a low-ranked adventurer like him dares to threaten the guildmaster, who's supposed to be a great and powerful man, and there's no way he would meet a mere C-ranked adventurer like Kim himself. Realizing that it's the guildmaster who ordered her, Kim tells the girl that he had no intention of seeing him and grabs her wrist, which makes her think that he's flirting. While the woman clarifies that she has a fiancé, abruptly, she hears the sound of bones cracking and screams as our brutal guy crushes her hand. The scene then switches to Julio Aventuras, a legendary adventurer who is the only one to reach rank SSS and is also the guildmaster of the Cavaloves Guild. 25 years ago, this man was a member of the Warrior Party, which at that time produced many heroic tales and succeeded in bringing down the Demon King. They were each granted a wish, just like what was granted to a monster and a villain. After he returned from his quest and became a guildmaster, he brought overwhelming influence and authority as he elevated the status of his 20-year-long occupation. Everything was made possible due to his power, which was granted to him, and that was the political power. Thanks to the enormous influence of the Adventurers Guild, Julio was able to construct this narrative. However, there was no adventurer in the warrior party this time because the king took measures before Julio could get his hands on the kingdom. This resulted in the second prince becoming the hero, and now people praise the symbol of the crown instead of the symbol of freedom. He was pressured with the thought of creating a hero from the Adventurers Guild before it was too late, to increase the status of adventurers. Like a promising adventurer like his son, Jorge Aventuras, who is arguing with his father about not taking credit of someone else's work, because even if he became a hero, it would be meaningless. His father tells him to be wise and lets him know that he's not doing it out of love. He wants to make a hero. He reminds him that he's the son of the adventurer who helped the warrior slay the Demon King 25 years ago. The father adds that he needs this story to add to his extraordinary background because the future of all adventurers depends on whether he becomes one. As they are talking, they hear a scream, and Jorge immediately runs after hearing the voice of her fiancé, only to see her lying on the floor with a broken wrist. Hopping mad, Jorge fiercely strikes the sword towards him, but our guy grabs his weapon and chokes him. Holding the broken sword in another hand, the boy ferociously slashes the sword that pierces through his head. Traumatized by the sight, Julio witnesses his son getting killed so brutally and screams. Without flinching, Kim asks him if he's the guildmaster and introduces himself as Jack, the rank adventurer. Grasping his sword, the adventurer recognizes him and apologizes for trying to take credit for his work, while Kim turns around and leaves after hearing the apology. Appalled to see Kim's cold attitude, Julio lets out that he beat up his guild members, crushed the arm of his daughter-in-law, and took his son's life. Our boy simply pointed towards the girl and said she wouldn't get the guildmaster, so he made her do it. The other guy attacked him, so he just defended himself, and lastly, his son tried to kill him, so he killed him first. With that, he decides to leave, and Julio, who seems to be bursting in anger, yells at him, asking if that's all he's got to say. He thinks that Kim is acting on someone else's command and asks his demands. But Kim clarifies that he has zero interests and doesn't even care that much about getting credit for his work. Once something is his, he cannot allow someone else to steal from him without his permission, and if he had let him know beforehand, things wouldn't have turned out like this. Just like that, Kim leaves after giving a callous justification, while Julio gets a reality check of his life. He realizes that he brought this upon himself and that everything he did was for himself, not for all adventurers. He regrets that his method of getting here was never right, and he forced others to make sacrifices for future generations. But it doesn't matter anymore because that bastard has already destroyed his family, and his future is stolen. That's when Julio decides to unite guilds like Kingbird Feathers, the Three Swords, the Youth of Verdeavel, and Cyclone Axe with the intention of ripping away Kim's future. The next scene takes us to the Paladin, who was lost in thoughts about her days of training in the city of the goddess. Breaking many swords at the training, the instructor was always on her case and concluded that she had physical abilities that were far superior to the others, but she failed to control. Deep in the thoughts, she recalls that her mentor made it clear that she'd be the king of the jungle if she were a beast. But as a paladin, she's a failure. Those words echo in her mind. And the paladin thinks about Master Kim, who taught her how to use her powers without holding back at all. However, this was the opposite of her paladin training, making her puzzled about whose words she should follow. On the other hand, we see many guys pointing out the place where Jack, the C-rank adventurer, seems to be staying. After that, as Kim is going on his way, he encounters Julio and asks him the matter, saying he already accepted the apology. But Julio seems to be hopping mad and questions him if he remembers a young man he killed, confessing that young boy was his son. Distraught, the father assumes how someone like Kim would know the feeling of losing a child. Shockingly, the guy responds that he knows it well. The vicious monster continues that after orphans and widows, he has more childless fathers than anything else, and each of them prattles on about getting revenge. While Julio peeks at the guy being so shameless, he rages with anger and asks what happened to those fathers who wanted revenge. Our guy then confidently points toward himself and lets out that he's still alive, which is pretty obvious. That's when Julio loses his cool and attacks Kim, who seems defenseless. He pulls out his sword and leaps towards the guy, calling him an insolent fool. Holding the sword, Julio reckons how he has developed an aura and sharpened it for decades, adding that this power can slice through dragon scales like paper. He might be an old man, but he is of the previous generation of the Warriors Party and the world's only rank S adventurer. Flaunting his full capability, Julio strikes his sword and aims straight for Kim's neck. However, this fella never loses to anyone and kills Julio in a flash, with his blood dripping everywhere. Stepping away, Kim notices many guys dashing away in the opposite direction, screaming that there's a monster. Our boy gets flustered as they pass by him, and it's clear that they're not running away from him. Just then, he witnesses a cold-blooded massacre as the blood of people spills everywhere on the streets and peeks at the paladin standing near them with the blood dripping from her very hands. While the girl trembles with fear as tears stream down her face, she looks at his master and calls for him. Not reacting at all, Kim sits against a wall, takes out his magic pouch, and yanks out a big piece of Griffin's leg. He begins munching on his food while the paladin wipes her tears and sits beside him. Kim asks her if she wants some meat and she nods her head. To his surprise, the paladin aggressively starts eating the meat, which seems to brighten up her mood. Meanwhile, the girl eats the meat like a hungry beast. Our boy looks at her with his side eye, thinking that Griffin meat isn't that good. After all, it's a hybrid monster. After eating the food, the paladin confides in him that people believe that the goddess grants paladins their supernatural strength, but in reality, they are modified humans made from a simplified manufacturing process of the saintess. Thinking that it's no secret at all, Kim already seems to know this since the prince told him before. Shaking, the girl further discloses that paladins are also test subjects for experimenting with abilities for the next generation's saintess. She concludes that it might be the result of one of those experiments, showing her hand, which is swollen and looks similar to the troll's hand. Clenching her fist, the girl lets out that she cannot overcome this strange impulse, while Kim realizes why he felt an odd sense of familiarity when he first met her. It is then revealed to us that Kim never once considered even his parents to be the same kind of life form as his, and the same goes for his disgusting pig-like brother. For this reason, he always kept his distance from everyone and kept his abilities a secret. But strangely, he showed the paladin his abilities without hiding anything because she was the same monster as him. Kim then remembers how they made a mess here and completely wiped out the Adventurers Guild of Cavaloves along with its guildmaster. Yanking out his thoughts, our guy instructs the paladin to get a ticket for carriage, as they can no longer stay here. When the girl asks him where he's off to, Kim informs her that he has some leftover business to deal with and assures her that it won't take him long. As soon as the girl sprints to get the tickets, a voice calls for Kim. It appears to be the assassin who happened to hear their conversations. Nonetheless, our guy asks him for payment, and the assassin hands him a pouch. Meanwhile, Kim contemplates that the higher-up speculated that paladins were used as test subjects for creating saintesses. There is no definite proof, however the paladin's words confirmed that hypothesis. The assassin then tells him that he got him some travel fare and a new identity. Jack, a 26-year-old Class 4 mercenary who is a member of the Spurs mercenary clan of Almaruez. As the guy gets his next mission, the assassin asks him his next destination, to which Kim responds that he's heading to Santo Canargo. Leaving for his next mission as a mercenary, Kim ruminates about Santo Canargo, where he first encountered Prince Edward, and gets excited to unite with some old acquaintances as a secret guardian knight, referring to Old Man Baron.